Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Look, it's like an American movie, Adriana said. The night, the moon. It sounded so solemn, she felt. Michael was laughing now. Besides, he didn't like the moon. That big yellow fool, sticking herself out in the foreground for no good reason, he said. Well, Kathy, it'll light up the craters. It'll light up the craters. He imagines himself a second sun. The moon, continued Adriana, and the two on the hill by the telescope. Beautiful boy, beautiful girl. I'll be right back to you. Smile. All 32 teeth. A dentist I know told me that. In the West, they put in crowns as white as a plumber's smile. I'll ask if there's life on Mars. Are you interested in complex forms, or will bacteria suffice? Michael was adjusting the telescopes to something unknown to her. She felt rather than saw his instantaneous flying smile. Compared, Adriana thought, how beautiful I am. Compared to him, so ordinary a face, they were both close to 18. Adriana is short, sturdily built with well-developed forms of dark brown and clean hair, and cut short her facial features are large, regular. Dressed simply jeans, sweater, no jewelry, no perfume scent. Only Michael, and maybe Ethan Forresters knew about the quiet abyss in which is known. In short, whether Adriana is good or not. It's still a question of a lover who will like it, who will not. But Michael's such a thin face, such eyes at him, look at him, mouth ajar and breathless. You stand there and you forget what you wanted to say. The prince is the scion of royalty. Of course he is. Michael's dad is not a king, but a minister in the regional government. Michael's mother is a ballerina, former prima ballerina of the opera and ballet theater. Now she teaches at a choreographic school. When Michael invited Adriana to visit, she invariably refused. She was uncomfortable. She was afraid that she would feel like a hostess who was being scrutinized through a microscope. She hesitated whether to swat it or let it run. What was Adriana to them? Zero. No stick. Fatherless. A daughter, teacher of Russian language and literature. For the 100th time to sort out the numbskulls, captain's daughter. It's not for you to decide matters of national importance or dance the part of Giselle. Michael's parents are probably afraid of the girl he's trying to be friends with, in case the unworthy candidate still manages to seduce their son. Does he need an ordinary wife? Michael will finish school, continue his education somewhere in London, get a job in the cloudy heights, then it will be possible to look around and choose a wife among equals. Until then, no. No, no. And this girl in jeans has to be taken away. No, she'll be treated quite nicely. But Michael called her. You'll be watching your favorite Mars. My favorite Venus, muttered Adriana. I hate the color red. Look, Michael looked at her even cheerfully. It's a scary business. 470 degrees in the shade. But remember when you showed it to me. It's as dazzling as a diamond, and its lands bear the names of our goddesses of love. Give it up, said Michael Archipelago, and Char, and Aphrodite, and the land of Hellas. And then there are the mountains of Freddie West. Adriana remembered everything he had told her. But look, it's much more interesting here. Michael, what's here? Adriana nestled into the telescope, fixing her eyes on Marcelo's nose. It's not a big deal. It's just Buzina talking. Wait for it. We'll live to see the confrontation. Then everything will be for you, mademoiselle. With our pleasure, you'll see the polar caps of the sea in storms. Will you stop it already? Here, Michael. A mother's voice as clearly as if Christina was standing next to him. How long can you play with your stars? You're 18 years old, grew up Versta Kolomenskoy, all the same. Shall I remind you who's to blame? You should ask Michael. You and your mom. Not so often, but his mother still took him little to visit her friends. They were all young then, all dancing. Michael knew what was waiting for him there. Women as thin, smooth-jawed as his mother, and the same veins showing through on the high bangs. And they talk excitedly about ballet, about stage parties, teachers. If Michael had been asked, he would have said that he hated ballet, but not because of the director's tricks or the fact that his mother was interested in nothing but dancing. No, ballet had become his personal enemy. On a quiet evening hour, when he entered his mother's room without knocking, carrying Captain Grant's children in his arms, perhaps Mama would read to him. She was lying on the sofa, dozing by the climate-covered plaid. That plaid was always with her. She used to throw it over her shoulders as if it were a shawl. All Mom's energy went to the stage. And at home, she was fragile, tired. Peace all the time. She lay with her arm behind her head. Stretched out, her feet were bare. Michael walked over and forgot what he wanted to ask. He hadn't seen this before. He remembered his mom in high-heeled shoes. 30. Number 3. Cinderella. And the little feet were very much in keeping with Mommy's easy, graceful appearance. And at home, Christina invariably wore soft, Uggy boots. God, they feel so good. She kept repeating to change her shoes. Or did she say nothing? Just a blissful sigh of relief. And what he saw now were not his mom's feet. No, they belonged to some kind of monster. Unnaturally long fingers and pinky toes, as if broken calluses were stone, dark, on his left foot. The toenail on his big toe blue, like it's been hit with a hammer. And this is with a mother who takes such care of every little thing. Takes a long time to pick out her dress and jewelry. If there's a night out, she changes her hair several times. Michael guessed. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Wasn't Mom tortured by her feet? Ugly feet and flying across the stage are two sides of the same coin. But how much does it hurt? Beauty. Michael remembers having the same blue elbow when he accidentally jammed his arm in a door. But his mom elevated every trifle into a tragedy, just as pain is not considered a tragedy. It doesn't matter to her, and it doesn't matter to Aunt Clara. But I'm sorry, he couldn't bear his mom's suffering. He's always been very sensitive to pain. And when Mom was telling a hard story about a performance that was excruciating for her, when she could barely hold on to the end, she noticed that Michael took hold of his whiskey. What's wrong with you? It hurts. It's like a bow to the heart. Mom remembered that expression and asked about the play. But it would be like a bow on the heart. So you want to hear it. And that time she, feeling Michael near her, awakened from fashion, intercepted his gaze and hurriedly tangled her feet. With a smile, she tried to show her son that it was nothing. It was nothing. But how beautifully, she said. Point in Russian just means point. A point. We touch the ground with 2 points or even 1. That's the calluses. You can fly only on their calluses, and rubbed his hair. Do birds have calluses on their wings? Michael asked. And since Christina did not answer immediately, he explained to himself. You can't see them. They have feathers. You'll go to the dance school too, said Mother. Like it's a done deal. You'll find out for yourself what kind of life it is. Did he shake his head? No. But Christina didn't react in any way to his no. Apparently, she just decided not to insist at that moment. However, she had determined Michael's fate for herself. Understand that she proved to her husband, who was not thrilled with the fact that the son will be made more Ron. Michael, on the other hand, would be Siegfried's ideal. He has the data. I get it. Michael almost burst into tears. So you're serious? Stop mocking me. I'm not going dancing. He imagined mangled fingers, all the body aches, and the daily grind at the bear. Just show them to the committee. Just show them to me. Christina convinced him a few months later. What have you got to lose? Don't worry. They'll see your sour face, and they'll give you a turn and go frozen. The admission tests were held in 3 stages. Michael on the girl couldn't. There were more girls in the crowd. Want to volunteer to sit on the ballet galley's fat and thin, tall, and short haircut. And with a bow, someone is nervous and pulls Mom's hand. Others repeat the voiced dance moves. Others have tears in their eyes. Michael defiantly turned away to the window. It is better to look at a rainy day on a wet black path in the park, to follow the drops running down the glass, than to look at this general madness or to hear the usual annoying whispers. Look, 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 what a handsome boy. A quarter of an hour later, the handsome boy stood in front of the admission committee, and despite the fact that he was almost naked in just his panties, looked at the maestros mockingly with a look all those. Turn around, raise your head, stand on your toes, he performed quickly and carelessly. And the same mockery was felt in his movements. He's a perfectly built boy, the older man said. Of course, maybe he'll grow up too. But for now, yes, the lady supported him softly. As smoothly as his mother, she came up to correct his arm, and he noticed what a beautiful brooch on her chest. At the bottom of the deep cut of the black dress in the stone, a glow shimmering, sparks like a starry sky. The dropout was big, very big. When she and Christina were leaving, Michael saw tears in the eyes of not only the children, but the moms as well. In the second phase of the trials, the doctors took over. Here there were fewer marriages. About 100 people reached the third round. Of them had to choose 30. You will be played a piece of music. Mom forced and offered to dance. I'll dance for them, Michael thought. And finally he's standing in the middle of the hall. The accompanist is a little extra on the piano. She started to play. Michael recognized the waltz from the first bars, and not wanting to act, he threw off his arms and spun. He flew around the big hall, enjoying the freedom, because it was still cramped at home, and here you can run around. A few minutes later, Michael opened the door. Christina stepped up to meet him and got what she wanted. Almost hatefully, he shouted. I was accepted and went ahead of her down the hall, putting his hands in his pockets, not wanting to look back. Seeing me off and whispering to the crowd. He didn't need ice cream now. He studied at the school for 2 years and finally became convinced that they have nothing in common with ballet. All those endless rehearsals, shouting teachers. Long leg, long leg, long leg. Step back on your left foot. You, or rather the foot, let the heel smile. And this pain that came as he expected the dreams and excitement of his fellow students, about roles, about performances. It was all completely foreign to him. Dove said, at last, to his mother, the old pedagogue Zakar, having studied in vain all this time with Michael, don't you drive him with a stick along this path. A slave is not a praying mantis. Your boy deliberately doesn't want to do what I believe. How do you expect him to go on learning? Do you know what high school is like? Don't torture your son. Put him in a regular school. Christina was silent for a few days. Michael didn't interfere. He didn't approach her with questions. He understood his mother had to get over the collapse of the dream of his ballet career. So what? Soon everything would be back to normal. And to get under the hot hand to hear harsh and unfair words he did not want. In the end, his parents put him in an English special school and took a breath. Still, not exactly a rank-and-file path. The school is elite, and the child from a long struggle with ballet took it as a respite. And she's doing great. The only memory of the past. Mom takes him to visit her when she has a ballet society gathering. You'll remember later that you knew these people. Maybe if Michael were older, he'd appreciate them. But to a 12-year-old boy, talking about ballet is intolerably boring. And they don't even finish the sentence. They just start to say a few words, and then they laugh. They understand. They're their own. Aunt Clara doesn't have a cat or a dog. Michael had already eaten the cake. Now that the diet was over, he was putting in his second piece. Stretching the pleasure with a spoon, he poked windows in the soft biscuit and imagined that it was a knight's castle and from above along the Kremlin in their one-time walk sentries. Sitting mentally recalled the novels of Walter Scott. And the piece disappeared unnoticed from the saucer. Finally, Michael crept away into the big pale green armchair and dropped his head on his arm. He sat as artistically as his mother's embodied wistfulness. Aunt Clara, passing by, stroked his hair lightly. Poor failed Siegfried is bored. But look at this. The pictures are pretty. I lowered into his lap an expensive, heavy volume. It was an album called Mysteries of the Universe. telescope pictures of planets, stars, comets, nebulae. Michael gazed out and up the world and disappeared forever. Before him lay galaxies and crystal whorls. Inexpressibly bright comet tails of unearthly colors splashed. Where does the path of these eternal pages begin, and where does it end? And what mesmerizing names of stars! Ahurnar, the abode of Daisy Antares. One of Michael's favorite fairy tales was the story of Jack, who threw magic grains into the ground. From them grew babas reaching for the unknown heights. What's beyond the clouds? Jack thought, and he climbed up into the sky. And on the clouds stood a fairy tale castle, and the story began, which Michael lived many times, mentally reincarnated into Jack. A single cloud with a castle on it and an enchanted princess who could be conjured would be enough for him. But deep down, Michael had always known it was a fairy tale. What he saw now, however, was a truth that could be seen with his own eyes every night. And what was inaccessible to the eye was confirmed by telescopes. So why do people live past this? Why was no one he knew shocked by it as he was now? Michael knew it from himself, from his family. They don't see the night sky for years. Forget there are stars in the sky. Busy with their own things, so small. Before this splendor, before these worlds, living, breathing with them, pulsing. Mama instructed Adriana to pick the last of the graves. Once upon a time, the cottage was loved by the whole family. One of Vera's first memories is of her father building a small white brick house. Then it is covered with wooden carvings and next to the pool for the child to splash. And Rosnef's mother is happy. She has always loved this labor on the land, planting thin branches. This will be a cherry tree. This will be an apple tree. Then the parents separated. Adriana was 6 years old. She understood what had happened in a childish way. Daddy was taken away by Aunt Cindy. He packed very quickly because Mommy was yelling at him, took his suitcase and left. Yesterday was today, no sign of him. Mom decided not to call Dad, no matter what happened. She cut out of the local newspaper phone numbers of different firms like Man for an Hour called, so that from there they came to nail up, to fix. The dacha was the most dilapidated of all. At the end of that September day, Adriana felt like an acrobat, balancing on the balcony to reach the grates. It would fall off. 3 meters to fly. And down below, the pool my father had built was empty. Now, once in a lifetime, everything will fall into it. And then how to get help. Going down was even more difficult. There was a heavy bag in each hand, and even on the railing one could not count on it. We couldn't grab them with our teeth. It was getting dark, and Adriana walked along the deserted dacha streets cautiously. Who else might she meet? And against the sky she saw a silhouette. On the hillside, a man was setting up something that reminded her of a telescope. Their eyes met, and Adriana had never before shouted at a stranger. Suddenly, she asked, "What's that?" "I'm sorry, of course. But it's dark. You can't see anything." And just as unexpectedly, Michael suggested that you'd like to see it. They were on their way back. Michael always saw Adriana off. It was her mom's request that he take her to the driveway. But if her mom hadn't said a word, they themselves have developed a ritual of parting, a confident door. "I want to ask." Michael stopped. He stood, now blocking her way. And she could tell from his voice that he was very uncomfortable. "Will you marry me?" That her face trembled as if it had never even occurred to her. "What are you talking about?" And she got ready to go again. "Wait," he held her back. "You just don't want to. Then there's no question about it. Or you're saying no because there's another reason. Wait, I don't get it. What made you decide to get married in the first place?" "Well, girls want to get married. So there's 7 of them. But nowadays, who gets married at 18? Exams are coming up. Then my father wants to send me to London to study." She lowered her head. He noted her grin, and the fact that she couldn't raise her eyes to him for a while. "So you're afraid of London with me?" He kept his hands on her shoulders. Adriana couldn't find a word for it. "Aw, you understand how I'm going to live. I'm out there, and you're in here." With despair, he asked, We've been apart for years. We're at war at home now. Because of me." Adriana was afraid. "No, I'm not going because of England. I'm not going anyway. Let them do what they want. But you and I should not be prevented from separating. No parents, no more hiding, no more excuses. Your father and mother will never agree to me," Adriana said quietly. "And that London. They'll send you there anyway. And then marry a rich man with a whistle. When they decide it's time. Listen to me." Michael looked into her eyes, and now she couldn't look away. "No one's sending me anywhere. If my parents accept you, you will." "I will," Adriana said. "I'll close my eyes. I will agree and live in this fairy tale for 10 minutes, and then I will open my eyes." Michael leaned over and kissed her. It was the second hour of the night. No one was in the park, and they stood there, embracing and singing to each other. They couldn't tear themselves away. For the first time, this lust for them broke through, and neither one could sway it. To the first, everything ceased to matter. Adriana had forgotten already that her mother was waiting for her at home. It hadn't occurred to Michael that his parents might be anxious just to be together. That was the only thing that mattered. Adriana didn't remember her heart pounding like that. The willow branches swayed in the sky in the breeze. The stars seemed to sway with the young leaves. Mom didn't turn away from the window when Adriana came into the room. At least he saw her off. Mom sighed. She realized how brief this pair of maidenhoods would be for Faith. Forgetting everything and wandering with her beloved by the hand. "The exam wasn't called," Mom said. "I'm sorry. I forgive him because he does walk you to the driveway. If he didn't walk you home, I'd forbid it, so you wouldn't have to feel guilty and make excuses." Adriana remembered Michael's words. "Very hungry." "Want?" she said, quietly distracting her mother's thoughts that you're not turned on to the cafe to have dinner. Parents do not give money to love and feed. For Mom were synonyms. Now she was suffering that Adriana had been hungry all evening and therefore neglected and unloved. Mom believed that she and Adriana were the two she and Adriana had left for each other. The only picture kept in the album was one where Mom was taken with her father. At one time, Adriana had kept it from being torn up. "Here you are so young," good Mom, never feeling sorry for herself and willing to stay up late into the night sick or well, cooking, drinking, and washing. But Adriana was born and turned out to be a weak, sickly child. The frail girl seemed to her father to be from another planet. With a sturdy boy, everything would have been clear from him. From the very beginning, the father would start raising a real man and a soldier, and all those doll bows under the crocheted throats. In the middle of the night, Mom would get up to warm the beast. Milk to take away the coughing. She'd turn on the light. They had a one-room apartment and saw her husband annoyingly cover his head with a pillow. "Maybe you should take a vacation and go somewhere in a preventorium to rest," Mom suggested, forgetting herself again in the preventorium. Dad liked it. He was an excellent dancer. And for 3 weeks of vacation, he danced Cindy, a cheerful blonde. When he came back, he wasn't himself. He was so gloomy, he wouldn't lift his head. Adriana's mother told me years later. I kept asking him what was wrong, and he wouldn't say a word. He wouldn't say a word. Then he told Kathy. "Kathy, the worst thing happened. I went over everything in the world. I thought he'd been recruited by a foreign intelligence agency. And he told me, I met another woman. It was the only time in my life my mother ever beat my father. I don't remember what I grabbed then, just a pot lid. I think he only covered my head with his hand. You see, I wanted what was best for you. You're sick. I did the remodeling without him. Wallpaper. The service is hard. Let him rest at home. He's such an animal." Father decided that he'd been punished enough, and now he could leave with a clear conscience. He packed his things and moved in with Cindy. Apparently, even she couldn't believe it was so easy. And the ex-wife doesn't try to get her husband back, at least for the sake of the child. So Cindy insisted. The father appealed to his superiors, and he was transferred to somewhere in the suburbs, where the young couple and departed. The reminder of the father remained a receipt for alimony, once a month, appearing in the mailbox, and my mother's firm conviction that she herself would never try to arrange a family life again. I can't face the table a second time. Don't believe it. No luck. That love, deceit, fake gold. One pain, not to be alone in old age. It's better to give birth to a child and then touch a man. We'll grow up, Mom said. In her heart, no doubt that this is the only option that awaits Adriana. I'll help. And the main thing for you now is to finish the institute and find a good job, so that you don't depend on any Porsche in your life. Michael's mother didn't like him, but she tolerated him because he was raised in a decent family, and the rite of courtship, memorable to his mother since his youth, he performed rigorously. He asked permission to take Adriana for a walk and brought her back on time. Mom thought that nothing serious would come out of this relationship. Adriana was no match for this boy, as they say nowadays, a major. But if still Mom was afraid to think about it, let her daughter give birth to a beautiful and healthy baby. You can tell by Michael's good blood. And the grandparents on the other side will help. It's so hard to raise a child alone. Still, Mom wanted Adriana to be just her daughter for as long as possible, with the simple worries of what to wear, where to go, what book to read, so that no men would intrude on their little world. Kelly was a small, dark-haired, hairy girl with a look that was all her own. Amazing femininity. Adriana had been friends with Kelly since first grade, and in recent years the girls had sat at the same desk. Adriana kept peeking out, and I couldn't wait to tell her about yesterday's proposal. But where had she gone? The class was about to start. Kelly ran into the classroom at the last minute. Her plaid dress was cinched with a wide sash. Her waist was as slim as an actress in the last century. "Where have you been?" "Mother, you know," explained panting and Kelly, laying out her textbooks on the desk. "Dresses yesterday washed on the balcony, hung not dried. I didn't even have time for breakfast. The iron was up to sushi. And Michael called me to marry." Adriana wanted to say it nonchalantly, like a cursive, but a smile blossomed irresistibly on her face. "Wow," Kelly whispered in shock from the old man already entering the classroom. "And when last night? That's not what I mean. When he wants you to get married right after graduation, and his parents agree." Williams and Smith said, "And old man, why don't you let me start the lesson? It's people like you that make it hard to explain things. Keep your mouths open. So open your notebooks, write down the new topic, and then read the textbook and the outline." We had to wait until recess, and then Kelly bombarded Adriana with questions, the most important of which was, "Is there really a wedding? Not a jinx. What are you afraid of? Even the prince is marrying anyone nowadays. Thank you. I'm already off the scrap heap, you know." My friend attacked Adriana again. "My older sister left me a hat and some beautiful white gloves in a box on the mezzanine. I'll go get it. My mom keeps everything. And she says, 'Kelly, don't get married so fast. I haven't had time to save up anything. If you get to the registry office, I'll go to the world.'" After school, Kelly and Adriana usually took a leisurely walk home. But today Adriana was on class duty, along with Ethan. So Kelly sighed and went home alone. Ethan was a tall, blond boy with a keen eye. Ethan was always dressed in the same protective color, a light jacket twist open, revealing a calfskin jacket. Everyone knew that his father was a forgotten alcoholic, and since Ethan was a little boy, he was considered the only male in the family. Usually the duty officers divided the class in half. You wash half, and me half wipes the blackboard, watering the flowers with a mop. "I can do it myself." Ethan quit, scrubbing the floors. He was surprisingly dexterous in his sporadic movements, twisted a heavy rag from the worn linoleum, and the classroom became clean. "Will you go into the army and ask for the Navy?" Adriana advised. "Field strange plant in the form of a green stick, from the top of which leaves fan out. Your ship will always be shiny. Ethan said nothing, just looked at her. No, seriously. Where are you going? Adriana asked. Ethan replied reluctantly, mopping under the teacher's desk. Polytechnic. I guess I'll give it a try. Adriana sighed sympathetically. Polytech seemed little better than the army to her. All that creepy math, the blueprints at school, she treated the exact sciences as punishment. They were the hardest for her, and here she was volunteering. Are you really interested in all this? She made a gesture as if drawing. There's not much I want to do. There's also such a thing as real life. Ethan lifted his head and suddenly smiled at her. Adriana had never seen him smile like that in all these years. It was short, but bright and trusting. And she also remembered that he went first in his biology class and all the animals. From the living corner, he was adored by parrots, sat at his outstretched hand for long periods of time. And Bella and the rat almost did not climb to kiss. He put them on his shoulders, several at a time, when he cleaned the cages. But you couldn't study biology in their town. You had to leave. And Ethan probably couldn't do that with his sick mother. Polytechnic Institute, 2 bus stops away, and the competition was low year after year. Where do you think you're going? Ethan asked. I don't know yet. With Ethan, everything is still hanging in the balance. She suddenly wanted to tell Ethan how scared she was, whether everything would work out, but he was the one she couldn't tell. So she held back, and he sensed something, standing beside her, hesitating. Finally, he stepped back. When the cleaning was done, they locked the classroom and went out onto the school porch. A warm breeze blew into their faces. The gardens were already matchmaking before school. And then Ethan asked you that way. I have to go to the nature store too. The fish had finished feeding. Then their paths diverged. Ethan ran to the other side of the street, but after walking a few steps, Adriana looked back and saw that he was already up on the porch of the store, nature standing there looking after her. Lunch was coming to an end. When Michael was a child, it was a never-ending dreary ceremony. Time after time, he had to listen to his mother's remarks about how to sit, how to keep his back, what fork to take. And the most painful was the feeling of hunger, which did not go away even after the meal. Christina considered gluttony a great vice. It's suicide to poison yourself with an extra bite, she repeated. And the plates usually had something symbolic on them. Then Michael became accustomed to the regimen and no longer noticed it, and was content with little. So what have you decided about London? Asked Rick about his lips with a napkin. If you are determined not to leave, maybe apply to our university. Dear parents, the family was used to this slight irony and accepted it naturally. Michael pushed his plate away. Let me make a counter-proposal. I will enroll in any institute of your choice and graduate in good faith. The parents looked at each other. So you didn't believe in any of them? And your astronomy? And what do you demand in return? Asked Rick. He knew that his son's word was unbreakable. And now, if he gives them a chance, it is possible to make for him the most important step that will determine the future of Michael. He would put his son through law school and then take him into the ministry afterward. So clarified Rick. In his heart, he was ready to make all possible concessions for the sake of the main thing. Michael held his breath. Right after graduation, I'm getting married. Christina dropped his hands powerlessly in his lap. I don't even know what's worse, she said. Wait, gestured Rick to stop her and clarified businesslike, we know this girl. It's unlikely she hasn't come to us. And how long have you known her? The last words the mother emphasized the second year. But you're not getting married because she's a face. Has she distorted it? No, mother, she's not pregnant. I would also like to add that no one is blackmailing me. Yesterday when I proposed to Adriana, she was even more surprised than you are now. So you've already made up your mind. What if Dad and I had? Mom, let's not play out the drama of parental despotism. An autocrat. And hair. Do you remember how old I am? Do you know that I can make up my own mind? You still want drama? Go ahead. Disinherit me. I agree. Christina sighed and looked at her husband. Rick, as always, was reserved. He didn't like to show emotion. And the question sounded specific. Can you tell us in a nutshell what your chosen one is? Michael shrugged his shoulders. Her name is Adriana. She's the same age as me, and she's graduating from high school. And her parents? Do you want to know if she's our type? No. Mother's a teacher, divorced. I don't know the father, if there ever was one. Christina, without raising her eyes, nodded her knife on her plate. Katja. Rick stopped her. We'll talk to you in private. And you're him, Michael. Tell your Adriana we're inviting her to dinner. We should get to know each other better anyway. Dinner was served in the small dining room, where the family usually gathered. Michael saw that as a good sign. Only the immediate family was invited here. But maybe Mom just decided that there was no need to parade some girl from the back alley. The parents were already seated at the table. Rick stood up to greet Adriana and pulled out a chair for her. He took a seat at the head of the table, Christina at his right hand and Adriana now at his left. Michael sat down next to her. Adriana kept her cool, at least outwardly. Barely had she poured her half cup of soup as Adriana nodded. Enough. Was she hungry? Michael didn't know, but she ate without showing appetite, just like her mother. So I gather. Are you graduating from Adriana High School this year too? Rick asked. And then where? Probably on the mobile path. Russian and literature. Yes, we have to do that. Rick nodded. The Russian language is in a terrible state nowadays. I myself did not abuse it at school, as they say. 4s mostly, no more than that. Komsomol work took all my strength. But what's being done now? It's impossible to convey. You know, I have to look through a lot of documents and sign them. So believe me, I'm horrified. My young people are ministerial beauties, all with higher education, or even two. They'd write something that would make you laugh, or call an interpreter to explain it to an old man. What were they trying to say? At one time, the country rose for money, decided that the humanities do not earn much. And now it's cleaning up the mess. Oh, dear mother. Rick put his hand to his cheek. Michael felt that his father's friendly tone touched Adriana. She obviously did not expect such attention, and answered him with an uncertain smile, in which sincerity was already evident. You must read a lot, Adriana. Michael, what does she like? That's rare these days. It's nice to meet such an attentive gaze. How are you looking at me now? It's the look of a man who reads. She put a big plate in front of Rick. The roast must have been cooked separately for him, because everyone else was served much smaller plates of stew and vegetables, herbs, unknown fish. Not a serious meal in my household, Rick said. Perhaps, Adriana, you can keep me company later. We'll eat humanely. Or are you an advocate of healthy eating too? A slight sound escaped her lips. Christina reminded her of being used to judging her ballet girls in terms of classical figure or marriage slouchy. She didn't like the look of Faith at all, which promised a heavy womanhood in the future. Didn't you take dancing lessons yourself, Adriana? It was Rick again. I did, Adriana nodded. In the 7th grade, an aunt came to us and started to persuade us. Promised they'd teach modern dance to the sick. She got all the girls excited. But when we came to her at the Palace of Culture, it turned out that she probably went to all the schools and the girls gathered. There was nowhere to stand. So this madam organized the selection, and you didn't pass it. That's not true. I was almost the first one out. I had to dance. You know, the 1, 2, 3 waltz across the room. I got confused about which foot to start on, and the lady yelled right away. It's pretty familiar. Christina, nodded Rick. Then we were gathered all the enrollees and comforted because some of the girls were crying. We were advised to do something else. I was sent to the puppet theater to work with puppets. I needed those puppets. What are you interested in now? Adriana shrugged her shoulders slightly. Art. Yes, I still love it. But it's a bit of a drive. The Philharmonic Theater is across town. And then there's grad school. That leaves books. I read a lot. You're not interested in politics. It's not my thing. Well, thank God. It's a man's business, after all. Rick's up. Well, darlings, let me say goodbye. I'm due at the ministry at 3. Passing Christina, he touched her hair with his lips and whispered, "Quite a nice girl." And there was no need to worry beforehand. But Christina sat tense, silent, and he never knew what she thought about it. The prom was over. No other way to put it. The school cafeteria thing didn't work. Rich parents insisted we should rent a floating restaurant, the one by the riverport. Of course, the grown-ups promised there wouldn't be much alcohol, just a little bit, but everything went as it went. And by 1:00 a.m., I ran into Lisa's class. "We have to get Betty or she'll fall in the water." Betty, the tallest girl in the class, was so drunk she couldn't think straight. At first she sat on the steep metal steps of the gangway and resented why the damn steamboat was rocking so much, even though the floating restaurant was deliberately offshore. Then Betty slipped down the gangway. By some miracle, she didn't break her leg. As we know, the drunk is lucky. Now Betty was standing over the side and throwing up. Eventually, Betty was laid on a bench on the upper deck by the class, covered her with her cloak, and Betty fell asleep. The three of them sat in a corner of the room, Adriana, Kelly, and Ethan. Adriana didn't want to wear her royal blue dress. It would have drawn stares. I had to explain where it came from. And Adriana was afraid to jinx it just yet. Didn't even mention Michael. And the dress she was wearing was that simple cast-on sheath that her mother had dreamed of. I sewed a light-colored suit and went out into the world for the first time. That's it. From now on, we'll only see each other at get-togethers, Kelly said. Slow music started playing. Ethan took a sip and asked Wind if he would go dancing with me. I misfired behind, nodded, and prepared to kick Adriana under the table with my foot. Had she refused, but Adriana rose with a smile. Only now she realized Ethan was in love with her and wanted to give him a happy moment. She didn't just put her hands on his shoulders, but snuggled up to him. And it made her feel good to feel his strength, his gentle hands rough against the warmth of his jacket. She reached her cheek to his shoulder, sighed involuntarily at his scent, and felt herself breathless with excitement. And she was so at ease. She pulled away and smiled affectionately back at him. At his look, at that tense question. "You'll be all right," she said, and hugged him again with the movement of the dance. And it was a farewell hug. The wedding was played at the campground. It began with a question from Christina. EP, as mentally dubbed the future mother-in-law Adriana Liss, who became a magazine and pointed to the wedding dress. "Adriana, do you want this lace craze?" Adriana shook her head. Not at all. She almost didn't believe there would be a wedding, and was tiptoeing around the issue, trying not to attract the attention of fate. She and Michael had agreed to drop by the registry office on a weekday to get married, as long as nothing went wrong, and everyone got off their backs. The campgrounds are on the shore of a lake, and there are several other lakes nearby. So everyone sat at the table and dispersed. Michael saw his mother and father sitting on the shore in a deck chair. And Christina's face is peaceful. The mother listens to the nightingale singing. Michael did not understand how one can come to nature and turn on full power music. Nature has its own concert hall, and this every time unique melody people hear so rarely. The glitter of small waves, the sound of young leaves, the rolling grasshoppers, and never do they pour in so self-consciously as they do at this time of year. Birdsong. Good, said Christina with her eyes closed. God, it's good. Are there fish here? Rick asked. Michael laughed lightly, remembering the picture. Once his father had taken him on a business trip. Officials were meeting in a rest house near Moscow. They were discussing something. Michael didn't try to find out that they wouldn't let him into the conference room anyway. He was off wandering in the spring woods. But when Rick stuttered about fishing, the organizers of the event immediately rushed to organize everything. And within an hour, you could see this sight. Rick standing in a small pool with a straw hat on his father's head and a fishing rod in his hands. Classic fisherman. The water in the pool is up to his ankles. You can't even see the water. It's all fish. Fish in the pool poured so much that legs and hands grab all around splashes in the shimmering silver scales. Michael noticed the confident mom tears on her cheeks and, without telling his wife, approached, leaned in himself. "Kathy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, nothing." She wiped her eyes hastily. "It's all over now." Well, Bereznoy stroked her hand with affectionate fingers. "Our everything with Adriana." And not wanting to explain, she hastily turned the conversation. "I'm very afraid for you. Why are you taking an airplane?" "I'm so afraid of flying." She always foresaw the bad. The black pessimist was talking about himself even now. Isn't it scary to take such a risk? That it's a good thing. Greece and Adriana have never been abroad, but if something happens, I'll lose everything. I have nothing left to live for. Michael's parents have one too. Don't worry, nothing will happen to us in the sky. I know that. The sky won't hurt us. Michael looked into her eyes, and though she still felt no tenderness for him, there was something in his gaze that was so understanding and compassionate. The strength of these feelings seemed out of place. Kathy smiled involuntarily at him in her years at the school. She hadn't met children like this. How clear-eyed and boyish, she thought. God forbid. No, God save him and Adriana. Kathy pushed her plate away. She wasn't good at sitting for hours. Pulling the cocktail away out of habit, ate quickly, like a person who made every minute count. Kelly's morning was getting better. "I'm gonna kill that hairdresser. It's not like it's going smoothly for me," she complained. Running over to Adriana and looking in the mirror at her unfortunate hairstyle. Adriana was nervous because the lights were out in the morning and her mom couldn't iron her dress. Kelly offered her services. "I stuck a screwdriver in the brush. I'm at home fixing things." And then she got electrocuted. Thank God it wasn't severe. But Kelly believed in omens and went pale. "Oh, Adriana, something's gonna happen today. You're gonna get a tongue lashing." And just seeing beautiful young people, friends Michael Yakovenko amused. And soon the lens rang with her laughter. "And you didn't invite Ethan?" she asked, quietly. "Why? I'm not a sadist, and he's not a masochist. No, you couldn't bring Ethan here and make him share in their fun. We can set the tea, serve the sweets." The waitress did not approach Christina, but Rick. She was experienced and unmistakably figured out the main person at the wedding. Rick glanced at his watch. "Wow, a cab will be here for the guys in half an hour. Serve, of course. Let them at least try the cake." The cake was ordered several stories high. If it was a gangster movie, the lid would be off and a guy with a machine gun would pop out, whispered Michael. Adriana giggled, and Kelly, businesslike, looked at the cake and said, "We'll have to take everything that the guests will not eat. Take it home." Little by little it was getting dusk. The silhouettes of trees, the stars in the sky lit up with small sparks. They waited, listening to the noises of the cab engine. The young ones were flying to Athens and traveling further in Greece. "That's a good tone," the EC said. "It used to be the way things were done. Church in the morning, restaurant in the evening, and then the train to the honeymoon. Don't worry, Adriana, your mother and your friend will be delivered safely home," Rick said. "I'll call you as soon as you get on the plane and when you arrive," my mom asked, and how she didn't want to hide it. But Adriana felt both her anxiety and her pain. "I will." Michael threw his jacket over his shoulders. "Into the car now." She resisted, but she didn't take off her jacket. It seemed to her that she was embraced by warm hands, and a moment later a bell rang in her pocket. Adriana remembered that she hadn't picked up her cell phone all day, and the tap was still glowing blue. "A text message for the rest of her life," Ethan wrote. On the airplane, Faith had a strange feeling like they were flying to another planet. She didn't know English at all. She had learned German at school. Michael spoke English, even without an accent. Special schools and a musical ear, Plus, he traveled abroad with his parents almost every year. And now, in the kingdom state of Greece, Adriana would have to cling to him like a deaf mute. Their independent life was beginning. Michael gave Adriana a seat by the porthole. He strapped her in himself. And she'd never been able to do that, even in the car. She'd never been able to do it. Even in the car, the belt wouldn't tighten. It wouldn't tighten. She had untalented hands. The plane started to taxi onto the runway. It's not that yet. It's slow, not scary, Adriana thought. The airplane shuddered and began to accelerate. Michael and Vera's fingers intertwined. "Are you afraid?" Michael asked. She was silent, but from her eyes glistening and wide open, he realized that she was terribly afraid. He leaned toward her. She felt his breath on her cheek. "Don't be afraid. Nothing will happen to me in the air. I know it. I can feel it. Don't be afraid to fly with me." But the airplane lifted upward, and Adriana jerked away from the porthole, pressed herself against Michael, and was no longer aware of being lifted by the unknown force of the engines, or its Michael hugging her. And they took off. Michael knew from experience that pilots gained altitude in different ways. Some lead the car as if they were climbing a mountainside, others as if they were jumping nonstop. Michael liked a continuous takeoff, and right now the car was going that way. The hour was late, and most of the passengers were trying to sleep. But Michael, like all nervous people, could not sleep on the road. He was glad he did. And believe, I didn't. Why don't we have some champagne or cognac so you don't get scared? No, I don't want to. I'm drunk enough as it is. Wait, I have a present for you. I wanted to give it to you this morning. Michael took something shiny out of his pocket and put it on her arm. Quietly, the rings quivered. Adriana did not look at it immediately, almost fearfully, expecting to see expensive stones. But when she opened her eyes, she saw the bracelet was quite simple. Copper rings, some metals, a glass, white, and a flower. "It's Adriana," bent over myopically. "I found this. I bought it at a junkyard. Look at all of Exupery's little prints." And she saw on one of the medals and displaced the figure of a boy in a long cloak. There's the rose, and the little brass lantern, and stars that laugh like Cubans, and a bronze 2-engine airplane. It will seem to you as if I were dying. But I'm not. My body is too heavy. I can't carry it. But it's like shedding an old shell. There's nothing sad about it, Michael said, humming as he always quoted memorized lines. And then he added, "You know, they found him, didn't they?" "Who?" asked Adriana, ready to cry. Everyone thought he'd been shot down by a German pilot. But recently fishermen found his bracelet. And then they found the wreckage of his plane at the bottom of the sea. But he was shot down. I think it was him who sent the car to the sea. I remember our Grinya, and for him, and for the soldiers of the GC flight, was a miracle. They thought that pilots were like birds. And then came the heavy machines with a lot of instruments. Gone was the imagination, the dream of poetry, and Exupery. He was sick. His back kept him from flying. Rumors were spread about him. Everything was so painful, so dirty, even his favorite things. Talking about him, I think he just decided to disappear. Don't cry. Better shake your hand and listen to the stars laughing. Adriana shook the brush lightly and heard a gentle, slightly audible, and the tinkling of crystal stars and tambourine. They tinkled, making contact with each other and hitting the bronze airplane, as if flying between them. They were sitting in a small tavern. "That's right. How does it sound?" Adriana said. "I thought it was purely pirate. From the last century, anyway. A place where drunken sailors congregate." "Not at all," Michael laughed. "In Greece, a tavern is a commonplace. If you look in and see that the tables and chairs are simple, like in village houses, and all the furnishings are the same." "That's exactly right. Greeks love them for hours. The most famous people sit here, and they come here all the time. Take a look around. Maybe there's a minister or an artist next to you. That's the kind of democracy they have." Or better yet, you have a menu and choose what you want to eat. Yeah, I'm gonna get it. Translate. Come on, Adriana asked. I can't even pronounce what it says. Here Michael poked his finger into the lines with a name like that. We just can't miss the lemon soup cat. Adriana couldn't take it anymore and laughed. I want that lemon soup cat. We're ordering cat soup. And we'll also get the variglico. This strong, sweet coffee and sun, young wine infused with smelly conifers. They sat and ate this fabulous soup, which turned out not to be of mustachioed striped at all, but rice with lemon, with juice. They ate fish fried in olive oil. In small sips they drank hot, really very sweet, and some kind of thick coffee. Before tasting something, Adriana sighed at the smell. There was nothing to compare it to. It seemed to her that the Greek gods ate exactly what they were eating now. She touched the rough yellow and green checkered curtains with her fingers, and their table stood by the window and couldn't believe it was all really happening. And from now on she and Michael would be together. The world opened up to her. And it was so simple. None of those non-young Greeks sitting next to them were surprised that she was here. She had seen nothing but the outskirts of her hometown and had no hope of seeing anything else in her life. They paid and went outside. Without conspiring, they turned and walked toward the two-story and golden-colored hotel building. Again their hands intertwined and they laughed. There's the meteor, Michael said. The cab driver, hearing the familiar word, nodded. I wondered why you chose this hot country. I only know meteorites, and this is the second place. There's no place like this on Earth. Where? A convulsive sigh, and Adriana made a hasty hand gesture. Exactly, asked the driver to stop after seeing the meteor. You still have to come to your senses. Home had always meant a lot to Faith, its protection, its warmth, its four walls and silence. No extraneous sounds, no other people's gazes. What she saw now were also homes, but God's homes create a monastery. Floating in the air, only God could. Islets of paradise for people to see how it was. Responsible rocks many 1 million years old from the creation of the world. Adriana decided for herself. Michael said that once there was a sea here with a communist bottom. As time passed and the sea receded, water, wind, and temperature changes turned its bottom into pillars of stone, as if suspended in the air. They really scorched these pillars, and the Greeks called them meteors. To the cliff tops began to climb those who sought solitude, hermits. They found caves, or just shallow cracks in the rocks here to pass the nights, or maybe days. They probably slept during the day and prayed at night, when the stars are as close as if they were touching their heads. When you are alone with the sky, what shocked Adriana the most was the monastery, street barbers. It seemed to her the most flying, unweighted finger pointing them into the sky. They passed over a narrow bridge. Adriana tried not to look down. There were chasms to the right and left, and small, cozier courtyards inside the monastery, where ancient walls and steps neighbor with flowery towns. Everywhere, it is a special morning frequency, which happens only in Orthodox monasteries and temples. In the center of the courtyard, beds in the shape of a cross, densely planted with flowers. You look, the cross is blooming. Later they will buy souvenirs, and what not only will not pick up relatives and friends, bags of herbs and bottles, with fragrant oils, grounded coffee, and Greek wine in empty bottles, painted clay vases, scarves, beads, statuettes, but about themselves will bring only 2 Tarot crosses. Michael will choose the golden carved one. It is permeated with air. Adriana will choose a golden one with birch inclusions, as if with splashes of sky. And it will turn out that they didn't choose them for themselves, but for each other. And they would exchange crosses, never to take them off again. They spent the rest of their vacation in Crete at Nicholas in the Gulf of Mirabella. There was quite a bit of Byzantine antiquity here too. The Church of St. Nicholas with frescoes from that era. St. Nicholas. Legend has it that Athena herself took a bath in this lake. I'll never forget it, said Adriana. Let's travel a lot with you. Every year we'll go to some new country. I also want to go to Norway. The fjords, Anderson green ice, and old trolls. The sea was calm, and the silver moon globe hung just above the water. Adriana couldn't stand it and followed the moon's path straight into the deep. A few moments later, Michael caught up with her. As the water began to nod their hips, they stopped. They stood in the moon's glow. Now, that's not going to happen anymore, Michael said quietly. What? Those seas? It will all be a thing of the past. An ocean of storms, a sea of rain, a sea of clarity, a sea of calm, a sea of fertility, and a sea of crisis. He was listing names, almost sang. They're right, my loved ones. They're right. You can't live in two worlds. Did you know that the moon's seas and the Earth's oceans are alike? They're the same depth. They have basalt bottoms, but our oceans are alive. Those worlds only come to life in the imagination. Enough. One must become a citizen of the Earth. He laughed softly, but it was a strange laugh. What are you up to? Anxious? Adriana asked. You won't be able to do without all this. Are you going to die with you? He laughed and drew her to him. Never with you. We are exiled, thought Adriana. After returning from Greece, they moved in with Michael, taking 2 rooms in the left wing of the house, the furthest away from everyone, with a private garden. Adriana was afraid to go out to dinner, too restrained. She felt herself at a table with a small tablecloth and numerous devices, where the servants served her. And most importantly, Michael's parents were nearby. And yet she walked. Rick was not always present at the table. Christina was emphatically silent. And if she spoke, it was to Michael. There was an unforgivable resentment in his voice. She wouldn't let the young people forget their guilt. They breathed it. Michael received a gold medal at graduation and entered the university law school in the summer. Adriana, on the other hand, didn't get a few points in PhilFac. Where else to go? There was nothing else to do. Please be with me, Michael. Please be with me, so that you're always here for me. Stupid. Kathy had a hard time holding back. Idiot. You realize you're going to be nothing. This family will throw you out sooner or later. And then what? A mop in your hands and scrub the floors. You're totally dependent on them. But Adriana felt that Michael had a string tugging at his heartstrings, and she knew that she was the one who couldn't hurt him. She couldn't contradict him. You have to do what he wants, what's best for him. So where did your friend go? I asked Michael when they were alone together. She persisted in not naming Adriana and her wife. Does she have to? Michael asked. Behind the softness of his tone, she sensed the challenge and accepted it. So her ability to do anything was not enough. Or did she just decide to live like a rich lady? She knows you won't mind. You'll put her up. And lying in bed all day painting her nails is certainly easier than going out and studying. She heard Michael's labored sigh. There were suppressed, unspoken words in it. Then the sun turned abruptly and left the room. Adriana tried not to show her face anywhere but her part of the house. It was getting dark. Michael and Adriana sit by the fireplace with no lights on. The wood has already burned through and the room is warm. Michael stirs the coals. They drink as rubies shimmer with fire. They don't give up. They don't crumble to ash. They live. Adriana pours wine into heavy crystal glasses and sits down on the rug next to her husband. The wine, too, is ruby-colored and smells of grapes. They say nothing. They stare at the catching-up embers. Adriana no longer asks Michael to tell stories. Now she tries to talk herself, to distract him from his sad reverie, perhaps the reason for his longing. It's just that late fall is raining. Next summer, you and I will go to India, she says. Michael's eyes travel down her arm. Should we? He asks. Do I still respond weakly? Not quite yet. It's hot. Someone told me that when you step off the airplane, it's like being in a frying pan. It's hard to breathe in the heat. I didn't know why I wanted to go there, says Adriana. resting her chin on her palms. I heard it too. Poverty, slums, filth. And then I heard someone else's story too. I don't remember, but no. I remember my mom's student. He decided to search for the meaning of life. Can you imagine? He was just an ordinary boy, chubby and square. I called him by his soul. He was a teacher. My mom told me about his internship with her. The kids wouldn't listen to him. They'd run after him in class. My mom kept them busy. And this man began to search for the meaning of life, read various philosophical works. He went to India and came back completely different. And he came back completely different. And they say there was a man like him. Shocked, he told me. He and his friends were traveling by car. And at some point the road divides into 3 identical paths. Then they learned that one leads to a waterfall, another to a village, and the third to a temple. But at that moment they had no one to ask where to go. They see an old man in a white robe coming. The thief had no time to open his mouth. The old man raised his staff and showed them the way, the path to the temple. They went there without a word, without a question. There they read minds, there they feel people, there even doctors determine the disease by the policy, by the heartbeat. "Let's go," Michael said and smiled. He hadn't smiled in a long time. Right? Well, let the pan stand. I also read that the shops there sell stones with stars inside. That's what they're called. Stars, and sapphire ruby points a beam of light at the stone, and a star lights up in it. Michael leaned slightly on Faith's shoulder and stood up, placing the glass on the table. "Don't wait up for me when you go to sleep tonight. I've got a lot of laws to deal with." He nodded at the table where the textbooks were divided up. This is how Adriana remembered those evenings. She lies there with her face turned toward the table lamp, and feeling the warmth from it, she opens her eyes. She sees Michael, bent over his books, his eyebrows shifted, and a thin, deep wrinkle crosses his forehead. Adriana, it seems that he is walking in the desert against the wind, and it is painful to him, this effort. In the last year of Michael's studies, he was interning at his father's place. Driving up in the morning to the government building, which in every regional center is called the White House, Michael was not in awe of his skyrocketing career, and even less did he feel reverence for the ranks. The governor had only recently been appointed and was in the process of selecting his cronies. As Adriana Michael explained, he felt like he was in a theater. All this bureaucratic fraternity smugly unashamed of anyone in the world. How dedicated they looked when he was scolding his subordinates. But what was behind it? Later, Michael heard the head of the press service say, "Good thing I got my paycheck. Holy shit. I wouldn't have lasted a day for the idea." But she was the one who liked to spread it thin the most. After her whipping, the girls' fingers were shaking, and the room smelled of Corvalol. They were afraid of losing such a lucrative job, but they didn't want to be considered human. And the humanity that had not yet died in them protested. Older officials had learned not to take anything personally. Michael had been present at meetings where fluff and feathers flew, but the boardroom door slammed, and the officials went back to being nonchalant and casual, as if nothing had happened. Michael was getting lost in the endless intrigue. The other day, he stood at the window with white-haired Cindy, one of those few girls you can talk to. Cindy was married and did not make a pass at him like the other ladies to whom Michael's marital status meant nothing. It was assumed that with his looks, cheating on his wife was a matter of course. "I've just been appointed head of the department," Cindy shared bitterly, "so I complained about how hard it was to settle in." So he sat down with the same feet to the boss and said that he was ready to replace me. Cindy confessed that the position wasn't hers. She wants to leave. She can't cope. Before teasing, she and summarized in general, "Enema, and know your place. Everybody's sucking up to everybody, or feel that they're about to be deposed. Try to get as fast as possible." All this was covered with lofty phrases about the people's good, and they were unrealistically polite. These people, Michael heard them talking all the time. Let's put it in a streamlined way. It seemed to him, approached the officials with a dog, a bloodhound. It wouldn't have honored the human scent coming from them. Michael was getting stuffy. The White House had a beautiful dining room with a conservatory. Everything in the world was served there, nothing more to be desired. Especially good were the cakes, the bird's milk. But Michael would call Adriana and get her to go out for lunch. While waiting for his wife, he paced back and forth in the small park in front of the White House. There were fountains running here. Tight jets made the water boil, stirred to the bottom. Michael stopped, putting his hands behind his back. Tall, thin, it was easier for him to breathe. A child in a red jumpsuit leaned over the edge, looked at the foamy white water, and asked Daddy, "Are there fish in here?" Michael could see Adriana from afar. Here she was jumping off the streetcar, rushing towards him, the hem of her golden-colored cloak flying away. "Like you." Their voices merged, and longing gave way to laughter. Next door, there was an alternate. They stood in line with everyone else. Watching the dumplings boil, the cook stirred them for the pilgrims in a huge pot. Then she would pick up a colander. Already, the line was beginning to move quickly. She and Adriana already had their own table in a corner. Faith's hand warmed Michael's hair. The pain lodged in the right sand receded under the gentle movements, her fingers from the dumplings and steam rising. "Where do you want to go tonight?" Adriana asks, and quickly adds, "Let's just go for a walk." Walking in this weather. She nods. She loves the weather and life in general. He has less and less of that love of life. He remembers that he felt her as a child and himself as an adult. How silly is that? She is the one who takes his hand and leads him in the city park of Clueless. November. Only a few dark green bushes still held their shape after being trimmed and stood like abandoned fairy tale animals. The rest of the trees and shrubs had long since flown over the bare, wet park. Beyond the granite parapet, the Volga beach, not a single person. A fine rain dripped cold water. They walked, holding hands. Their fingers were cold too, and only somewhere in the depths of their palms touched, and there was still warmth. Adriana again. With no musical or artistic talent, I began to describe what was around me. But what else was there to manage to notice? "Look, there are leaves left on that tree over there. Look closely. They're completely silver. And how does the light of the streetlights reflect in the wet asphalt? The ground is on fire. Red and blue gold. We walk on the solid, and the glow crushes and shimmers the colors." Michael put his palm on his chest under his jacket. "No, it's stuffy," and asked me to keep it down. Once, when they were walking, it snowed, falling in large flakes at once. It made the world seem childlike and fairy tale-like. It was so beautiful that they looked at each other and laughed. "Up, up, up, up. Look up," Adriana shouted. They threw their heads back and watched as countless snowflakes were born out of the unknown darkness, and they flew at them endlessly. Michael squeezed Adriana in his arms, and they all looked up, and their heads were spinning, because the whirlwind was not just descending on them, it was taking them with it. They didn't feel like they were standing on the ground anymore. Adriana sat in the barbershop. She always went to this little barbershop, where there were only two masters, and there were almost never any queues. And then there was still time left until the evening. Adriana decided to run into the cafe next door. Then it would be possible to avoid a formal dinner. At home, she took a cup of coffee and a piece of apple pie smelling of cinnamon. The filling was Kisling, probably Antonovka. Barely had time to settle in at the table and shake off the drops of standing snow from the furry lapel in my jacket as I slipped into my bags. Lightly vibrating her cell phone, she began rummaging through the compartments, never able to immediately find it. Adriana. She barely recognized the voice. Kelly. It wasn't her voice. Thin, childish, pathetic. "What's wrong?" Adriana assumed anything. The mother-in-law lost money. The pipes burst at home, and there was a flood. Eventually, Christina was fired for some theatrical intrigue, but she was told by the impossible, unthinkable Adriana. Michael was gone. Michael was gone. Adriana didn't realize she could grab her face, and in a voice as thin as Kelly's, Kelly, scream, 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 not realizing that the heads of everyone sitting in the cafe had turned toward her, that she had dropped her phone, and it was under her feet falling apart. She screamed, clenching her cheeks with her palms no. In a flurry, she knotted her hands and screamed no again. And then her hands were suddenly numb. Her heart is pounding and her hands are not us. Adriana can't lean on the table to stand up, and she can't cry because she can't breathe. Breathing is all confused and convulsive. Coffee is dripping all over the table. This Adriana does reach out a dead hand to grab the edge of the table and stand up, knocking over the cup. And next came the memory lapse. The house was surrounded by other people's cars. Christina, standing dry in the hallway, a certain straight woman in a black dress, arms cordoned off. It's not Michael in mourning yet, it's her favorite dress. Then they're in some very small room. It's unbearably stuffy. Adriana can't sit down. She circles the room. There she sits. Kelly. Her face is gone. What's wrong? Finally, Adriana asks. He drove up to the institute. A fellow student saw it. A car was coming. Not sure if he was drunk, but still he parked it so as not to hit anyone. When they ran up, he was lying on the steering wheel, dropped his face on his hand. They say he was very white. They say it wasn't clear if he was breathing or not. The ambulance came quickly, about 10 minutes. They tried to do something, but they said it was too late, too late. They took him away without his life. Yes, but what's wrong with him? But from what? What's the heart from? Adriana, it's my fault. I'm the one who grabbed my head. I went and asked for a waiver so your family wouldn't exist, and now she's gone. Lightning struck. Adriana looked at the clock and saw that the time was approaching 6:00 p.m. This was the time Michael always came in. Adriana realized she was waiting for him. He must come. Adriana realized that she was going crazy. She must be taken away. She's insane, said Christina to one of the ladies she knew. Adriana sat by the coffin. The coffin was in the largest room of the house, the one she and Michael had recently called the sick room. Sitting there were those closest to Rick, Christina, a few elderly men and women. As it turned out, they're relatives, but there were a lot of people in the room. Adriana could feel their presence, their breathing, but saw no one except Michael. Michael's face was indeed very white now. To say he was just sleeping. But he didn't look like sleeping. There was a distinct stamp of death on the huddled features. It was impossible to imagine him getting up and speaking. All of him was already there in the unknown. Belonged to him. Voices came in waves. Such a boy. Pity his parents had him all to themselves. Such a pity. What about the heart? Is it getting younger these days? Heart attacks, strokes, and there was no warning. A young wife will survive. But the mother. And he has no children left. Adriana raised her head and grinned crookedly. Another phrase nailed her. And the wife. Look, no tears. A few days later, as she was packing up her things in her and Michael's former. And now in no one's room she heard a radio a woman's voice saying, "The land is empty without you." It was only then that she was able to drop her head on the table and sob. So the body was in denial. And she knows why he left. He was strangled by the stranglehold of everyday life. He condemned himself to it. He couldn't take it for her. And she realized it so late. Adriana left the room, hanging on her shoulder the same backpack that had accompanied her to Meteor an eternity ago. What was she to take with her? But she knew everything she needed. She did carry. Rick not being at work somehow mattered little in their lives. Rick. He was almost never there. Showed up at the table, smiled, said nice things. And he was the one who chose the road to Michael's demise. Didn't feel sorry for his son. Didn't let him go. And seemingly unbending. Turned out to be more merciful. How could she not want to see her son on stage? She let him go. Go on, you'd better dance. Christina stood at the foot of the stairs, knew Adriana was coming down, but had not yet heard her footsteps. She was just a girl. Flowers, rock pants, hair in a ponytail. Turned away, stood there, but when she lifted her face, Adriana was struck by how her eyes were not just old, but ancient, all-leading ones that no longer feared anything. And there was in those eyes something of the look Michael was leaving. Asked her with a chesty whisper, though it was obvious. Adriana nodded. "You're going to your mom's, aren't you?" I said, "You'll be taken." Adriana had said right after the funeral, when she was able to speak coherently, that she was going back to her mother's house, and let them talk to her for God's sake, not about her inheritance, but about what she was entitled to. "I don't even want to know. I will live as I have always lived," she said then and now, seeing her former daughter-in-law off. Kelly couldn't help herself. She said almost against her will, "Try to get over it. Let it go. You'll be happy when you meet someone else." Faith's lips quivered. Kelly didn't realize the quick spasm running down her face. "Wait." Here Christina walked quickly to the dressing table, opened the jewelry box, sifted just as quickly with her slender fingers gawked or jewelry from one to another. About the ring, heavy, expensive. A white stone from a crisis sharp, probably a diamond. Be that as it may, pray for Michael. Don't. Adriana shook her head, pulled it away. Adriana, here is his cross always with me. Don't need anything else. And for the way the gaze greedily pulled Kelly at what she had chosen, held in her son's hands, for feeling the same fierce longing in her as she did in herself. Adriana had forgiven her for a lot of things. Nothing had changed in Adriana's small room. It hums with different voices, a car tractor parked under the window. The narrow bed is bedded on an old quilt pink still grandmother's. In the dark water of the aquarium swim goldfish. My "you are good" Adriana lies on the bed and Mom strokes her face. Her hair comes to life. "Mom, I'm pregnant, aren't I?" Colorless, Adriana says. "Jesus Christ." Mom raises her hand. "You're lying to me now." Adriana shook her head. "I've been to the doctor 12 weeks, and they know." You didn't need to explain who they were. Michael's family. No, and God forbid they should find out. But why? Don't you understand? Because that would mean losing the last thing I have. They had nothing left either. Michael was alone. So they're gonna take me and lock me in the house, and I can't be there a minute longer. I can't see it all. And then they'll take my son. He won't be mine. They'll raise him their way. They'll decide everything for him. They'll kill them. Like Michael did. The mother is silent. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Adriana asked, hearing her thoughts. "You always told me we'd grow up, but you can't imagine what I can't imagine." Adriana sat up on the bed, her face swollen. "You see, if I just mention it to them, do you know what could be?" Mother asked. "They might not believe it's his kid. They'll say you need money." "You what?" "I know they didn't love me, but how could they think that? You don't know people. Maybe they'll do the opposite, help you raise you. That would be good, because no one will come to your maternity hospital but me. There will be days when this child may have nothing to feed, nothing to wear. We have to leave," Adriana said, without listening to her. "If anyone tells them, if they meet me in the street with the baby, I won't survive if they take it away. We have to leave. Where you want to go, I don't know, but I imagine if I'm walking with my son somewhere and I run into Kelly, not just leave, and you would come with me. Where would I go without you?" Just answered Mom. Kelly came to the rescue. Kelly, it turns out, had a relative in Gelendzhik who dealt in real estate. He found housing for vacationers, selected options for those wishing to move. He responded to the call immediately and said that within a week or two he would be able to offer them something. But the case was delayed, mainly because of them to prepare the documents and find buyers for their apartment overlooking the dump. It wasn't that easy. Finally, things were working out. They were selling the apartment cheap, but the one that Kelly's sibling had picked up. Kelly's sibling had enough money. Kelly was helping to set up. She was very worried about Adriana hurting herself, and she was small and fragile. She took heavy knots, moved things around. Kelly's dream came true. She graduated from medical school with a red diploma and worked in a sanatorium Sosnovy Bor. She did physical therapy with the vacationers. She hadn't changed at all. Her pink baby face was still fresh. Kelly was like a memory of childhood, of that time when it is always easy on the soul. I'll come and visit you, and you'll be sure to ask me to be your godparent. Where is Ethan? Adriana asked. I haven't seen him for a long time. How did things work out for him? You don't know. And felt me from the invisible barrier, quickly looking for words to say coherently, to believe. Ethan failed. Then I went to the institute and got drafted into the army. And Adriana was up so fast that I didn't have time to prove my obstacle. And somewhere in Chechnya. And since then, Adriana, I really don't know anything. Adriana, don't cry. It's not good for you. Please, Adriana. Mom bloomed instead of a hive of high-rises, a stone house with a big garden. Mommy fries fish. She puts a huge pan on the table with chunks of flounder crispy crusts on her cheeks, and she's so animated in movement and speech it's like she's lost 20 years. Finally, the hour came. The hospital was close by in this small town, and they didn't call an ambulance. They walked. And when Adriana knocked on the emergency room door, and as soon as the sun came up, a boy was born. He cried softly, as if he hadn't cried at all. He was talking, soothing his mother in his own voice. I can feel her fear for him. That mommy didn't scream at all, the midwife said, gray and bossy. That's the way we'd all have a baby. He's a good-looking boy, too. It's rare to see such a handsome one. He's a prince. I heard your husband died. He left. Adriana wanted to answer, because for her it was like that. Michael had gone to his worlds, and no one else could prevent him. But it was easier to nod than to explain it all. Look, don't name it after him then. The midwife said, it's bad luck for the child to have a happy fate. Picking up another name for him, Adriana took her eyes away, staring. There was a full moon out the window now. The Bay of Rainbows. She repeated Ocean of Storms, but through these names she saw the lifelessness of the lunar landscapes. She decided to name her son Sam, and Mom was already asking in her notes, how is our Sam? Mom was the only one who came to see Adriana. Colorful balloons tied to the fence, Kelly and the dads going into the trees with binoculars. None of this was for her and her son. Despite the best efforts of his mother and grandmother, Sam was growing up, weak and almost ceaselessly sick. There was no childhood illness that would pass him by. Maybe another mother would have taken it more calmly and waved goodbye to outgrow it. But Adriana lived in constant fear, frozen. Would the last thing Michael had left be taken from her? Adriana, you're crazy. You bastard, look at yourself in the mirror. What have you become like? Kathy was angry. You don't look like a shadow in the mirror anymore. Adriana had really lost a lot of weight. There were blue shadows under her eyes. She forgot to eat because she was tired and didn't want to. She has snickered over these months obediently, uncomplainingly, like an automaton doing her homework. Mom would stand on the threshold of the bathroom, watching, shaking her head at the laundry grinder, a decrepit machine. Adriana bent over the tub. Sharp elbows snicker and puffs of steam. Believe wonders at Sam's voice. She fucks off the hand foam running to see if the baby is calling her. She wanted to hold her son's hand all the time. But when Sam turned a year old, she had to go to work. There was a job as a clerk in a bookstore. And Adriana was hired, although she had no experience, but she was diligently unrequited, even if one of the customers was cranky or rude. In addition, she read a lot and could suggest something, showed the shelf where the right books stood. She paid attention to the novelties. The salary was small, but at least it was regular money. Kathy retired and now sat with her grandson. Sam grew up not a garden boy in the mornings when young mothers walked by their house with all the children waddling obediently behind their backs. Sam sat on the table and gazed at this picture out the window. He had a look of sympathy written on his face, and his grandmother was tying his shoelaces, skinny and pale, with a perpetually hung throat. Was he so much like Michael in features and appearance that it made your heart ache? Grandma used to make him semolina, but he didn't want it. It was depressing to eat. He moved his spoon around the plate and wrinkled his nose at the smell of hot milk. Adriana took specially prepared nuts and raisins and began to lay out a simple mosaic of nutty bunnies with raisins on the porridge. "Son," Sam would take up the spoon until he awakened from his fantasy, and he was bored with everything. Their neighbor was Miranda, a corner, ugly girl of about 27, plasterer on the construction site with her own hands over the dilapidated house, only for the hardest jobs they called men. Two Alkas, who quickly dragged something to her, broke off the pricks at night to sit at the table as soon as possible. Miranda made herself cozy to make everything like people. She came over, consulted. What wallpaper to choose, paint. She was used to everyone being interested. She couldn't understand Adriana's indifference to everyday life. "Yes, mother, do you even live like a refugee?" she says, looking around. "And the shabby furniture and the owner's meager closet." Adriana shrugged weakly. But Miranda was a kind soul. She carried something to treat. A bucket of apples, a plate. Blinov eagerly played with Sam. Miranda was eager to get married. Every man who paid attention to her, she was ready to wash his feet and drink water. She'd cry on his shoulder. When another romance went sour, "You've been without a man and nothing." She'd tell Miranda to blow her nose loudly. "And I'll have a baby somehow, like me. I don't have to." One time, Miranda came running in excitement. "And I met him. You have no idea who he is." "Well, who is he?" Adriana asked with an involuntary smile, wiping the plates. "He works with dolphins. We went to the dolphinarium yesterday with the girls. It turned out that yesterday they were walking along the promenade in a small group, and just then they called for a performance. That's how it happens. For 100 years you live in the city and do not notice that you have dolphins in your neighborhood, and the girls are performing so beautifully. Their uniforms are like military pianists, and the dolphins obey them, jump through the hoop, and do all sorts of things. And then in the echelon, even from the last row, Miranda saw that the man was tall and slender. Such a face, and what his dolphins were doing, except that they didn't talk. They understood him half a word. And when after the show people were offered to take pictures with the flash hoppers, Miranda hurried downstairs, one of the first people to be let into the pool one by one. When her turn came, Miranda was able to get a glimpse of his god dolphins. There you have to rinse your hands with seawater so the dolphin doesn't get sick, or something doesn't get infected from people. And there he is standing dolphin. What a dolphin this guy is standing. And when he took my hand, you know, there's men like that. They just touch you, and it's over. And how did that end? You met him at Adriana. That was fun. Well, I said I liked it so much. I'll come back tomorrow. He said, come. By the way, you shouldn't take me to the bench. It's fun. After Miranda left, Adriana got to thinking. She read dolphins, curing people's children. Why not? At least try to negotiate. Pay her to let her socialize with this marine wonder. Maybe it would help. She went to the dolphinarium in the morning when there was no show. Timidly, she pushed the iron gate, painted blue. The first person she encountered was a girl in shorts or a scarlet t-shirt, blonde hair tied carelessly at the back of her head. The girl was carrying a bucket of fish, and she looked sternly at Adriana. Probably sick of vacationers trying to get their way with their pets. The story about the sick boy had softened her somewhat. Come over there and talk. She pointed to the edge of the big pool. See, there's a man sitting over there, if he'll let you. We've never had one of those before. Adriana approached silently. The man sat with his back to her. He was wearing a black suit. He was looking through a file folder. All she could see was the back of his head. Blonde. Excuse me," she called out. He turned around. For a while they stared at each other. He saw a woman not young, but a heavy-set figure, hair, short waves. You ask, a deep crease between her eyebrows. The dress below the knees is very plainly made. You can see that long ago waved her hand at the fashion of a puffy shawl on her shoulders bathed in it from the sea. The breeze is fresh. Then something changed in his face, and he recognized Adriana. Was she uncertain? Asked Ethan. She too was not immediately able to recognize in this man in whom nothing of the boyishness of her classmate remained, the other quite different. The stare was stark and even heavy in his shoulders, and more gray in his hair than she had in one movement. He stood looking at her and remained silent. "Did you come to me?" Finally, he asked. "Did you find me?" She shook her head. "Kelly, she told me a long time ago that you were dead." He touched his temple, covered his eyes. So all these years she'd thought of him as dead. Where did that fool Williams come from? Did she tell you about Chechnya? I just got shot. It's a common thing. I was in the hospital for a long time, almost a year. My mother left everything. She came to nurse me back to health. She's waddling around with a stick. And then we moved here. It's the right climate. And I found some relatives. And you, he corrected himself. You and Michael vacation here. Why do you need me? I buried Michael, she said simply. And my son is sick. They say dolphins can heal. They can. For a few minutes, he looked away. She tried to catch his gaze, whether he would allow it or deny it. She thought he was hesitating, and he just couldn't manage his face. But when he turned back to her again, his expression was calm. What are we talking about? Bring her in, he said. Even probably will help. Maybe you too, because you don't look so good either. And she was silent, and for the first time in a long time she spoke sincerely. No, Ethan, I haven't wanted to live for a long time. I'd like to raise Sam somehow, he answered. Not at once. We used to think differently, he said. When someone died, it was like being on an airplane. I'd see a paratrooper being dropped. One went in, the other got a tap on the shoulder. Are you next? None of us are staying here. We're all next. So live those 3 seconds like a human being. And he added, wait, you're coming with me now. She got her file back with a bucket full of fish and beckoned her, brought her to the edge of the pool. Come on, stand over here. Adriana saw there in the depths vertically stands a dolphin and looks at her from his dolphin, its blue dimension. Hold out your hand. That's it. Ethan took her hand. She felt the rough and hardness of his palm. A moment later, Dolphin leaped into the air, and she felt the instant touch of his nose. She ought look, but that's gentler than a horse's lips. That's a good for you, Barney. That's a good one. Ethan crouched at the edge of the pool with a fish in his hands. The dolphin poked its head out, and it looked like a baby. It had a completely childish smile. She smiled back. They stood against each other, a sturdy floor and gray-haired man, and a small, slender boy. Hello, Ethan said. Hello, tilted his head to get a better look at the person he was talking to. Sam replied politely. They studied each other. Ethan saw in the boy's eyes of faith to an inquisitive desire to understand each. The same pity. This little boy seemed to be looking at him with compassion too. What frightened him? The scar on his face. He was lucky in that fight. How many were killed? He realized then how easy it was to die. Suddenly, the fierce machine gun bursts from the right. You turn your head and see that your comrades are already there, a bloody stain on their chests. And the eyes are calm, not from here. The battle is boiling, and the man is already walking along unknown roads. Some say all warriors go to heaven, others say they are damned. Losing friends, Ethan believed that there they would be met with covered grass and silence. From his first days in Chechnya, And still today, silence was what he wanted most. His legs were ragged from knee to fingertips, an automatic rifle clutched carelessly in his hand. He was a sniper, and in his mind one thought pleading: the silence of silence. The sea is silence. When Ethan got home, he thought nothing would help. His whole body ached in pills, but a handful gave no respite from the pain. Friends were sending mummies. They called her to all parts of the country. Some to Altai, some to the Caucasus. You'll rest here. And then he hugged Delphin, just like Adriana, just like Sam did today. And he smiled at him from his childhood. Ethan cried. Then he learned that he wasn't the only one with tears flowing. Many of the people the dolphins began to heal could not hold back their sobs. And Adriana came as exhausted as he had ever been. She should just be taken by the hand and carried along as he led his boys out from under fire. Now it's her and that boy's turn. What's up, brother? You can't scare big fish like that. I guess they don't bite, Sam said diplomatically. I've read about them. Can I pet them? The water's warm, so take your clothes off, kid. They'll even take you for a ride. What are you doing? Adriana gasped. He'll catch a cold. He'll never catch a cold or drown. I'm watching him. Sam was so intoxicated, he couldn't remember himself, and he squealed with delight. The little baby vest was firmly encrypted on him, and his new friend stayed close to him in the water. And most importantly, the dolphin's elastic vibrations of the water from his big body. And you could throw your arm around and hug this fabulous creature and glide along with him on the water surface. Adriana sat on the edge of the pool, dipping her hand into the water to check that it was really warm, then wiping away the tears that rolled uncontrollably down her cheeks. On the weekend, Ethan had invited her to swim to the rocks. Where was she dumbfounded? What a mother. You've lived by the sea for so long without ever seeing it. I'll give you a tour. Adriana couldn't even imagine what her mother would say. Her daughter had decided to act like a girl again. And Adriana lied for the first time in her life. She lied. She said that this Sunday they made it a working day to rearrange the books. In the morning, the sea is clear as a tear, rested. Well? Asked Ethan. He sat at the water's edge and watched Adriana walk towards him in a golden sundress. He couldn't believe it was her, that she was here. He brought everything he needed, stretched us a towel. Lying there were 2 pairs of swallows. The red ones bigger, the green ones smaller. Tube masks swam. She asked. It was a wild beach here, large rocks with sharp edges. Ethan took Adriana's hand above the elbow. He wouldn't let her fall, and it was definitely worth it for her to slip on the long, silt-covered seaweed. As Ethan's strong fingers and instant reaction brought her back to her balance, the water seemed cold, and Adriana hesitated for a second there. She asked, pointing to a distant rock, "And if I'm not overpowered, I haven't swam in 100 years. Yes, you will swim," he said calmly. "You'll surprise yourself. Just don't panic. Give it to the water. The sea will carry you." Adriana put on the mask. The rubber eased tightly over her face. The tube stretched her lips unaccustomedly, but Ethan stood by her side. Adriana lowered herself onto the water, and it was as if she had been transported beyond an unknown frontier. Into another world, he was as real as the earthly one. But until a moment ago, it had not existed for her, and now she was part of it. And only in the audible strain of her breath sounded her amazement. Adriana poked her outstretched fingers into the rock, feeling the prickly shells and fluffy strands of seaweed beneath her hands. Ethan gestured for her to sit down. She sat down. Suddenly, her head was above water. Again, the crossing of the unknown boundary seemed overwhelming and the air cold. God, how far away the shore was. They sat in the middle of the sea, hair wet, wind lapping. She turned to Ethan even now, after the sea font with salt-shot hair. He seemed to her quite a boy, and she was the same washing by the sea with spontaneous strands of hair. It was as if that school time had returned. Ethan laughed. "What's up?" The sharks didn't eat you. You must have made arrangements with them in advance. You grumbled, she said. I remember your talents. The sharks wouldn't have touched you. Adriana said, wiping her wet eyes. They sat on a rock in the middle of the sea and reminisced. It was almost completely calm, and only occasionally Adriana started in a succession of small waves at them, one a little higher than the others, and was rising to keep her head from rolling off. They remembered an old man nicknamed Terminator, owner of such a powerful bust that she could demolish everything in her path. I've never seen women like that in my life, Ethan said, and they memorialized the school bully Charles in 3rd grade by breaking his leg. His teacher came to visit him, and while she was having tea with her mother, Charles managed to bury her glasses in a flower pot. Poor nearsighted Jenna. How did she get home? And the glasses stayed safely in the pot until spring, when her mother decided to replant the geraniums. They went back in their thoughts to exams and prom night, and they were kids again. Ethan suddenly said, Adriana, nightmare. My eye slipped. I think I'm without one. Calm down, only calm down, replied Ethan, immortal phrase, bent down, looking into the water, and Adriana saw the deep scars and the ugliness in his back. Ethan dove in. A few seconds later, Adriana felt him put a loss on her leg. What if he had drowned? She asked. Or the flippers? He asked. Don't drift. 2. I could get you to shore sometime. You're only a short swim away. Wow, Adriana thought. The shore was drawing a thin line somewhere on the horizon. But Ethan had his own notions of easy and hard. He took his time climbing up the rock, just held his hand on the edge of it, and it appeared to be at his feet. Adriana, you're not going anywhere else, are you? Suddenly he asked. It was night, and the wind was whipping Adriana's glass, clusters of lilac blossoms. And from those flowers, Ethan knocked. Adriana, open up. Adriana knew it was only a step and a lift of the hook on the door. One move, and there would be Ethan. And her future with him, because he wouldn't let her go anywhere. She even felt like Michael would want to hand her over to Ethan, to be safe for her there. She stood and did not look toward the window. The puffy handkerchief had a warmth coming from it. She hugged herself like a little girl. Tonight my star will be just above the place where I fell a year ago. I'm going home. You see, it's very far away. My body is too heavy. I can't carry it. She felt a breath against her cheek and the nudge of a finger against her back. Michael, his presence was so palpable that she was afraid to turn her head. He pushed her toward Ethan, and now she was already throwing back on the hook. Michael lived as if barely touching the ground, like his mother's point shoes, all directed toward the sky. And he and Ethan are earthly wanderers, carpenters, not yielding to the maiden and love life. If one gets tired, the other will not let fall, will support, and they will go on until their last sunset. And when she opened the door to him, he said, stretch out your hand, and placed a small black stone in her palm. What is it? She asked in surprise. It's my father's, he explained. All I have left of my father is an old guitar. A year later, I accidentally dropped it. It cracked, and inside was duct taped this note to me. And this pebble here. A meteorite. My father wasn't always an alcoholic. He wanted me to know. He used to believe and dream, and hold stars in the palm of his hand. This is the most precious thing I have. I give it to you because you are my star. And Adriana nestled silently against his chest. Subscribe and click the bell.
The apartment was abuzz with pre-wedding bustle. The happy bride put herself in the hands of her bridesmaids and watched in the mirror the last preparations before leaving for the wedding ceremony. Nora, you are going to be the most beautiful bride. Helping to put on the dress, one of her friends spoke. Such a gorgeous dress. Another remarked, it must have cost a lot of money, right? Yes, blushing with pleasure, the bride replied. Edward told me not to save money and to choose one I liked. I couldn't resist and bought this. It fits you perfectly. It looks like it was made especially for you. It really accentuates your figure. It makes you look like a queen. When I get married, I'll buy one just like it. The fit and the fabric are beautiful. You have great taste, Nora. Nora was looking at herself in front of the mirror, her blue eyes shining. Her lush dark hair had been skillfully styled by the hairdresser's hand into an intricate style. You're lucky to have a fiancé, sighed one of the girls. And where do such men come from? One is an alcoholic, the other has money, but he's so stingy. He's lucky to have me. Nora laughed, pleased with the effect on her friends. Please straighten the hem, there are some creases. Oh, girls, suddenly she realized. Give me the necklace quickly, I almost forgot it. Ah, opening the box, admired her friends. It's fabulous. Nora, it is wonderful and looks so beautiful on your neck. You could be on the cover of a fashion magazine right now. You and Edward will outshine all the other newlyweds today. I'm so happy. Nora was glowing. Edward, he's so wonderful, and I love him so much. But it took him too long to marry you, and I don't know why he took so long. I knew right away you two would make a wonderful couple. You even look alike. That's the first sign that you were meant to be together. At least we've tested our feelings, and now there's no doubt that we're meant to be together. We have our whole lives ahead of us. In the matter of marriage, rush is not necessary, so that then do not regret, and do not run a year later in the institution of marriage, only already divorced. At that time the door opened and Margaret came into the room. Mommy, look at me. How do I look? Nora walked around the room, letting those around her admire herself. The girls were doing their best. It's wonderful. How beautiful you are. The woman brushed away an unsolicited tear. I can't believe you're getting married. It seems like only yesterday you were a baby, and today you're already a bride. How quickly you've grown up. It's pathetic. Mom. The daughter came over and hugged her mother tenderly. I love you very much. How Father was happy for you. The woman sneezed. He has already been with us for 2 years, and still in my head does not fit that I will never see him again. I'm sorry, dear. I've upset you. I shouldn't have brought him up on a day like this. You've got a wonderful event coming up. Let's stop talking about sad things and enjoy it. Come on, Mommy. I miss my father very much. He's always in my heart. Nora confessed. I miss him too. I know how hard it is to lose someone you've lived with all your life. He was a wonderful husband and father. Today he would take me to the wedding reception. Yes, we have raised a beautiful daughter. It's a shame he can't see that. Margaret smiled through her tears. I'm proud of you, daughter. I also dream of grandchildren. You and Edward have already thought about children, haven't you? I hope I don't have to wait another 2 years for them. Oh, wait. She looked at her daughter questioningly. Where is Edward? Why isn't he here? We have to leave now. Call him quickly. Where is he? I hope he'll meet us at the wedding venue. Edward? Nora was glad to hear her fiance's voice on the phone. Edward, can you hear me? Where are you? The girl angrily interrupted the conversation. She couldn't hear anything. There was some noise in the receiver. It sounded like cars passing by. That's good. The mother was nervous, punctual by nature. She hated those who were late. So we're on the road, no reason to panic. I hope she doesn't get stuck in traffic. Oh, come on, Mommy. He just got a little out of sync. The bride stood up for the groom. You know his work takes up a lot of his time. Something urgent may have delayed him, but he'll make it. What work? It's not what he has to think about right now. You're having a wedding, too. Margaret sighed. They didn't want to have a traditional wedding. With a bride price and contests for the groom, it would have been fun, and the mood would have been festive. You know what kind of wedding my father and I had? The whole yard was celebrating. Something to remember in my old age, but what did you do? My dear Mommy, Nora hugged her mother. It's not fashionable now, you know. People are all busy. They don't want to waste time on old-fashioned rituals. What's the point of all this? What's all this fancy? Mother shook her head reproachfully. Just meet at the marriage ceremony. You are now together for life. It's such an event. Don't be angry, dear. We are not 18 years old. We're adults, modern people. Why do we need these contests, posters, shouting? You also advised me to put a doll on the hood. It's the 21st century. Suddenly, there was an audacious knock on the door. Here comes Edward. With a triumphant look at those present, the bride announced. No, no. Waving her arms, Margaret shouted. Don't you dare come out. It's bad luck to see a bride in her dress before the wedding. Listen to your mother, Nora. Don't go out to him? Mother, Nora laughed. What is this relic of the past? Harry? The smile slipped from her face. We're ready to leave now, but I can't get Edward on the phone. Have you talked to him lately? Do you know why he's late? He wouldn't pick up his cell phone, and now he's disconnected. Nora, with admiration, looking at the flushed girl, the man said, You are amazingly beautiful today. I'm sure you will outshine everyone at the wedding. My heart almost stopped when I saw you. You're dazzling in that dress. I envy Edward. Madam, he bowed jokingly, the carriage is ready. Please follow me. The man bent his arm at the elbow. Nora took him under her arm and followed him to the car. Don't worry about him. Don't overload your pretty head with non-existent problems. Maybe something happened to his phone. That's why he's not answering. I'm sure he's waiting for us at the wedding reception. You should be nervous. Edward can't be late for his own wedding. He's been looking forward to this day. I hope he has. I'm very nervous. Nora? Suddenly one of the girls shrieked. The bouquet! We almost forgot the bouquet. No. Terrified, Margaret shrieked as the young woman prepared to return to the apartment. Don't you dare come back. It's bad luck. Girls, someone take the bouquet. When you leave the apartment, be sure to look in the mirror. Mom, Nora sighed. What kind of prejudice is that? Together with Harry, she headed for the car. Nora, the girlfriends and Margaret followed. We're coming to get you. Don't panic. There's still time to register. Everything will be fine. You'll see in half an hour, this little misunderstanding will be resolved. Expectations were not justified. Among the gathered bridegrooms, the groom was not present. They were approached by friends who cheered the bride. Nora, you are unbelievably beautiful, and your outfit is so gorgeous. Are you upset about something? Where is Edward? Tears welled up in the bride's eyes. Why isn't he here yet? We thought he was coming with you. Don't be upset. She was being comforted from all sides. It's still 15 minutes before the ceremony starts. He'll definitely come, you'll see. He can't leave you just before the registration, can he? Edward is not capable of such meanness. Let's wait, in case something's wrong. He'll come and explain everything. Oh, I don't like this. Margaret was nervous. Call, where did he disappear to? We can't go after him, can we? It's embarrassing. The groom didn't show up at the wedding. He disconnected the phone. Nora said confusedly, listening to the perky female voice of the answering machine. I don't understand. What's going on? He couldn't have turned off the phone. Her friend reassured her. The battery is probably dead. You know it happens. Or did he change his mind about marrying me? There were tears buried in her wedding dress. "Don't make this up, Nora. Edward couldn't do that to you. If he's not here, then something serious must have happened." What could have happened? How hard would it be to just call and tell him he was running late? How can he warn you if he's in trouble? God forbid. He'll be here any minute. But as time went on, Edward didn't show up. Finally, another happy couple came out from behind the door. Nora. The girl was surrounded by her friends. "We should go. It's our turn." "Where's Edward?" "What happened? When was the last time he called you?" "How could he?" "That doesn't sound like Edward. You two didn't have a fight the night before. He couldn't just not come to his own wedding, could he?" "It can't be. He's crazy about you. Leave her alone. Can you see that the girl is upset?" Margaret hugged her crying daughter. "We don't know what happened to Edward. We're at a loss. The phone is off. Can't anyone tell us what happened? Why didn't he come?" "Harry, we all turned to the man. You're friends with Edward, aren't you? Come on, what happened? Why was he so mean to Nora? Did he say anything to you? Think back, Harry." Humiliating, Nora looked at him. "Tell me honestly, did he change his mind about getting married? Did he just run away from me? Scared? You confide all your secrets to each other. Surely you must be guessing where he is. Please tell me. I don't know what to think. If you're offended, I don't know why. We didn't have any problems last night. All we talked about was the wedding." "Nora, I swear he didn't tell me about his plans. I called him a few times, too. His phone's disconnected. He didn't say anything about not coming to the wedding venue. There was no hint that he had changed his mind, or was at all hesitant to marry you. We saw him yesterday afternoon, and he was content and happy, looking forward to the wedding. He said he loved you very much and wished he'd proposed sooner. I can't think why he's still not here." "Yes, then where is he? Why isn't he standing here with me? Why do I have to blush in front of the guests? I didn't push him to get married. He asked me to marry him. And now it turns out he didn't need it at all. If he so easily didn't come, and the most offensive thing is that he did it without explanation. What a position he's put me in, and on my wedding day. I don't recognize Edward, or do I not know him well?" "Nora, calm down." Margaret stroked her daughter's shoulder. "Things happen in life. A guy gets nervous, he backslides, who doesn't? It shouldn't have happened to me, Mom, you know? We're not children to be afraid of responsibility. If you changed your mind, why don't you just tell me honestly? Why don't you just show up like that? That's mean. That's low. I don't deserve to be treated like this." "Nora." Harry was frantically thinking of what to do, what to say to calm the offended bride. "I'm sure Edward will be able to explain everything. We just have to wait for him. We'll all calm down and be patient. Tell me, the girl attacked Harry. What do we do now? How long do we wait? It's clear he's not coming. He left me at the doorstep of the marriage institution. How can I bear the shame? Now everyone's going to point fingers. You abandoned girl. I wonder what he's doing, while I'm standing here like a fool waiting for him. And tomorrow the whole firm will laugh at me when I show up at work. Pull yourself together, please. Let's be logical. He couldn't have left you. It's as clear as day. I think something happened to him. Shit, shit, shit." Edward was nervous. I'm so screwed. How could such a stupid situation happen to me?" He stretched his hand up, hoping that a miracle would happen and the phone would catch the network so he could call Nora and explain. You'd have to get stuck in an elevator on the day of your own wedding. Can you imagine what's happening to Nora? But it's not my fault the elevator broke down and the repair crew is in no hurry to get me out of here. I wonder how much longer I'll have to stay here. He dialed the dispatcher's number. Girl, honey, do you realize that I have to get out of here as soon as possible? How long do I have to wait? Are you gonna do anything about it? Listen to me. A woman's voice on the other end of the line answered him indifferently. Stop calling. This is the 5th time in the last half hour you've dialed the control room. You're wasting the line. I told you very clearly, the master will come when he can. What's not to understand? Your situation is not so critical, and in the next house stuck mom with a baby in her arms, and her first priority we must save. Is that clear? Just wait. It's not my fault that elevators are always breaking down, and the master is one for several houses. Nothing will happen to you if you stay in the locked cabin a little longer. My situation is critical too, shouted Edward. My fiancé is waiting for me at the wedding reception. The guests, the table in the restaurant is booked, and I'm stuck here, though I should be putting a ring on my beloved's finger. Do you realize that by your grace, the family is ruined before it's even born? She's not gonna believe I'm stuck here by accident. Imagine yourself in her shoes, have some compassion. You've got to think of something like that. The dispatcher said angrily, It's his wedding. They could have come up with something more original. You don't believe me? The man was indignant. If my fiancé leaves me, it will be on your conscience. You have no heart. Stop occupying the line. I cannot jump above my head. As soon as the master is free, I will immediately send to you. But in the meantime, be patient. Wait, said the woman and hung up. That's great. Annoyed Edward banged his fist on the elevator wall. It's the worst thing in the world, waiting and catching up. I hope Nora will understand and forgive me for being stuck here. What if she thinks I'm a coward? He clutched his head with his hands. I'm so screwed, I'm so screwed. Guilt-free. Some more time passed, and suddenly the elevator came to life and moved. Well, recluse, come on out. The elevator doors opened, and in front of Edward was an elderly smiling master in special clothes, with a tool case in his hands. Sorry, brother, I couldn't get you out earlier. Edward stormed out of the booth, nearly knocking the man to the ground. What a freak! What's he doing running like that? The foreman shook his head disapprovingly. So what if he sat in the elevator for a while? The world didn't collapse. The unhappy groom dialed the number of the cab. To the wedding reception. He said as he got into the car, Are you late for the wedding? Looking in the rearview mirror at the young man, in a strict suit with a boutonniere on his jacket lapel, the driver asked, You're already late. Edward said bitterly, I'm afraid everyone's already gone. Listen, friend. He turned to the driver. Wait for me. All right, but don't take too long. The unmarried groom flew down the stairs in one fell swoop and burst into the wedding hall. Where is it? He asked and hesitated. What do you want? Tiredly asked the woman, collecting papers from the table. Everyone went away who wanted to be married, and you were looking for whom? A bride? Edward waved his hand hopelessly and went to the cab. On the way, dialing a friend's cell phone number. Harry, where are you? Edward at last. Where have you been? I'll tell you later. Where's Nora? Well, we're at the restaurant, celebrating a wedding, so it's not a waste. Whose wedding? The man got in the car. Drive to the restaurant. He told the driver and gave the address. When the man entered the hall, the guests immediately quieted down in anticipation, looked at each other, whispered, discussing the appearance of the long-awaited groom. Nora? A friend touched the young woman's arm. Edward is here. Oh my God! Nora splashed her hands. Look who's here. Edward, you're just in time as always, and we've been waiting for you. Daughter, her mother warned her. Stop, don't make a scene. First find out why he was late. Let him explain. I hope he has something to say for himself. What's the matter, Mommy? Why do I need a scandal? Why spoil the party? Come in, Edward. You'll be a guest at our wedding. What are you talking about? The groom is worried. What do you mean, your wedding? What is it? I'm getting married. Congratulations, I got married just like I wanted. How could you get married if I wasn't here? That's exactly why. Nora came right up to Edward. I finally got married, with you as a bride. I'd have had to wait until I retired, and I was tired of waiting for you. Wait a minute. Nora squinted angrily. Let me see, how many times have we postponed our wedding? 3 times, because Edward wanted us to, and he always had a very convincing reason to say no, and now he's finally decided to make me happy. Everything seemed ready for the long-awaited event. The bride circled the hall. The guests are invited. The wedding is scheduled. The restaurant is booked, and suddenly interferes with his majesty of chance. The groom did not show up at his own wedding. Ay, what a nuisance. The bride is weeping. The guests are perplexed. What scandal? Wait. Edward tried to stop her, grabbed her by the arms, turned her around. I can explain everything. There was a funny situation. I got stuck in the elevator. Honestly, I can even bring a certificate from the dispatcher. It's a completely stupid story, like in the joke. And I don't want to hear it. Nora broke free of her ex-fiancé's grip. You think it's funny? Let's laugh together. We have a party, guests are here. Tables are booked. We can't waste the good. Friends, she addressed the crowd, who froze, not knowing what to do in such a situation. Let's help ourselves. Everything is paid for. Smile. Toastmaster, invite guests to the table. I want to drink. Why don't we postpone the wedding? Edward tried to stop Nora from going wild. I swear, this is definitely the last time. There's no need to reschedule. I got married. And conveniently, I didn't even have to change anything, just the groom's name. To whom? Edward stared at her, dumbfounded. To your best friend, Harry. So the wedding took place, Edward, but without you. As you can see, there are no irreplaceables. What are you talking about? How could you marry him if you were going to marry me? Are you talking out of spite to me now? I understand, and I'm not even offended. What right do you have to take offense at me? I didn't leave you, you left me. I didn't dump you, Nora. I love you. In despair, Edward didn't know what other words to use to convince his fiancée that it wasn't his fault. I've decided I've had enough, and I've married Harry, darling. She took the man under her arm, pressed herself against him. Tell my ex-fiancé we married you? So this isn't a joke? Boiling Edward. You just marry the first guy you meet to spite me. Harry's not a first mate. He's been in love with me a long time, and he's always there for me, unlike you. Get lost. You're not welcome here. Honored guests, let's keep the party going. Harry, is she joking? Edward looked at his friend confusedly. He was silent. I don't believe it. You couldn't do this to me. I love you. It's the resentment in you right now. Yes, I postponed the wedding several times, but not because I doubted my feelings for you, but because I was afraid of losing my freedom. Edward, what's the matter? You're free. You're free from your obligations, from me, from having to get married. No one's going to restrict your rights if that's what you're so afraid of. I'm gonna have a man by my side who's not afraid of responsibility. He didn't have to think about whether or not to marry me. He didn't have to wait, check his feelings, Talk about his lost freedom. He went ahead and married me. Harry? Edward turned pale and looked at his friend. I didn't expect you to be so mean. We've been friends since we were kids. I never thought you could do this to me. I was just supporting Nora. The man replied to his friend's attack. I couldn't do otherwise. Seeing her deceived, humiliated was beyond me. And then something happened that no one expected. Edward swung and drove his fist into Harry's face, causing him to fall, his nose bleeding. What have you done? Nora shrieked, rushing over to Harry. Somebody get me a tissue and call an ambulance. Don't call an ambulance, the man asked, sitting down on the floor. There's nothing wrong with me. I lost more than just my fiancé today. Edward looked contemptuously first at one, then at the other. But also your best friend. I wish you happiness. Edward, rubbing his bruised arm, turned around and walked out of the hall. He didn't remember how he had gotten to the street. He walked swaying, as if drunk, unable to make out the road. When he noticed a bench, he sat down, tore the boutonniere from the lapel of his jacket, threw it in the trash can, grabbed his head, and groaned. A man? He heard a voice beside him. You're not feeling well? Should I call an ambulance? You're not yourself. An ambulance won't help. He looked at the old woman who was staring anxiously at his face. It's all right. Don't worry. Did you have a fight with your wife? She asked sympathetically. Nothing to make up. Who doesn't? Edward looked sadly at the woman, but said nothing. She stood by him for a while and then walked away. The man got up, caught a cab, and in a few minutes was already entering the entrance of his house. Now you work like clockwork, he grinned, when the elevator doors opened obligingly in front of him. Because of you, my whole life has gone down the drain. I lost my fiancé and found out that my best childhood friend was a traitor who took advantage of the situation and married her. How am I supposed to move on with my life? He stepped out on his floor, opened the apartment door, stumbled through the suitcases in the floor of the dark hallway. We had to. He grinned bitterly and kicked the suitcases standing in the driveway. To go on a wedding trip with Nora. And now what? Nothing. Now I want to get drunk. Everything collapsed, crumbled like a house of cards. The man went into the living room, took a full bottle of whiskey, a glass, a snack, and sat down on the sofa. Well, Edward? He turned to himself, raising the whiskey glass. You're free again. Only I'm not bloody happy about it. He downed the glass, grimaced, and poured the next one. Why would I want that kind of freedom? I'm not just free, I'm alone. Why do I need all this? How could I have been so wrong about Nora? How could she even take and just replace one fiancé with another? How could I have been so blind? On the other hand, he took another sip of the hot drink. For too long, I was going to marry her. Then there's that elevator thing. I can't believe they'd do such a mean thing to me. But they did, didn't they? How am I supposed to go on? I don't understand. He closed his eyes, the empty glass fell out of his hand, and Edward fell into a heavy sleep. In the morning, Nora was awakened by the doorbell. Disheveled, her eyes reddened with tears and sleepless night, she grudgingly went out into the hallway and opened the door. Hello. Harry was standing on the doorstep. I'm sorry I'm so early. I couldn't help but come over. Hi. Nora stepped aside to let him into the apartment. How are you? I'm sorry. I asked a stupid question. He was embarrassed. I'm hanging in there, as you can see, still alive. Any regrets about yesterday? I don't know. She wrapped herself in her robe. I just wanted to check up on him. I was expecting him to make a scene, to yell, to be indignant, but he believed that I could cheat on him. You saw, he hardly ever swore. Do you understand? He had no doubt in his mind that it was true. And I was stupid, expecting him to meet me at my house and beg me to forget everything, to start again. Or at least call me, but nothing happened. He didn't come, he didn't call. I'd even felt like he didn't care, just walked away. It turns out he never cared about me. Married is good, not married is good. One less thing to worry about. The shame is not that he was late to the marriage ceremony, but that he believed in treason and did not even allow the thought that I deliberately invented everything. You're wrong. I'm sure Edward is very upset about what happened. You're his most precious possession. At least that's how it always seemed to me. I was wrong when I thought he loved me. I imagined that we'd be happy, that we'd be together forever, that we'd make a perfect couple. I pictured in my mind what a good father he'd be. I made plans for the future. God, she covered her face with her hands. How stupid and naive I was. I should have forgotten about him the first time he moved up the wedding date. He said it was temporary, that he was having some problems at work, and he didn't want them to mar our married life. But it was. I know what I'm talking about. Then he postponed the date again, explaining that he was offered an extra job and he wanted to earn more money for our wedding, and a part-time job would not be superfluous, and I believed again. The girl smiled unhappily. You should trust him. You shouldn't have. You should have run away from him then, so that you wouldn't be in such a stupid position now. It doesn't make any difference now, though. She fell powerless into silence, her hands on her knees. Her blue eyes were faded, and the life seemed to have gone out of them. She shook her mop of dark hair. Maybe it's a good thing it happened this way, and I can see now that he doesn't love me. But how am I supposed to live now? I don't know. He was the best thing for me. No one else? I never even thought about. It all happened so fast. Even in my wildest dreams, I couldn't imagine that we'd ever break up with him. It's a shame. Harry said with a sigh, that you love him and not me. I would never have betrayed you. I'd have broken myself to pieces, but I wouldn't have let a single tear fall from your beautiful eyes. You're a very good friend. I'm sorry. Nora looked guiltily at Harry for dragging you into all this. I said the first thing I could think of, just to spite him, but I didn't think he'd believe it. And then he came at you with his fists. She put her hand to the man's cheek, which had a bruise on it. Did it hurt? I'm so ashamed of Edward. So easily and simply doubting you and me, it hurts. I will never forgive him. Nora. Harry took her hands in his. I'm always here for you. If you need help, remember, just call me. I'd do anything for you. Anything you want, I'll do. You know how I feel about you, don't you? Harry, you're so good, but I love Edward and I can't help it. So what's next? If he doesn't call, are you just going to suffer? I'll go. She stood up resolutely. I'll talk to him quietly, explain everything. I think he's already realized that he made a mistake, but he's afraid to admit it. You know he's proud. And then I need to find out if he was really delayed by the elevator. That story sounds too far-fetched. What if it really happened? Then what if I was wrong to be mad at him? Let you down? No, thank you. Nora shook his hand, looking at him gratefully. I'll do it. Thank you so much for your support. It would have been very hard without you. I can imagine how you must be feeling about the fight with Edward. I'm ashamed to be the bone of contention between you two. When I explain it to him, I'm sure you'll reconcile and he'll understand. After seeing Harry off, the girl quickly cleaned herself up and went to her lover's house. She imagined that they would laugh about the accident, hug, Edward would kiss her, and everything would be like it was before. Nora firmly pressed the call button and was answered by silence. "Strange," she said thoughtfully. "It doesn't open. Where could he have gone? Maybe he went to the store. I'll try calling." She dialed the man's number. No answer? Why? Doesn't want to talk? The girl still stood under the doors and then returned home. There her mother was already waiting for her. "Daughter, where have you been?" "I'm exhausted. Why don't you answer the phone?" "I turned off the sound. I don't want to talk to anyone." "Sorry, even to you, I wanted to be alone." Nora went into the living room without undressing and sank down tiredly on the sofa. "Mom, he's not home. He's not answering my calls. What am I going to do? I feel so bad. Did you go to Edward?" My mother was surprised. "Don't you have any pride left?" I did. I wanted to tell him everything, but I kissed the closed door and came back with nothing. "Well, what did you want? After news like that, any man's gonna lose his temper. It's all right. He'll pout and come back. I didn't think my innocent deception would go this far. I didn't even think he'd believe it. He should have realized that you can't change from one groom to another in a few minutes before registration. He must have been so angry with you that he lost his judgment. He was jealous of Harry, especially since he added fuel to the fire with his declaration of love for you. I didn't even realize he was secretly in love with you, always keeping a low profile with Edward. I don't know what to do." Nora was desperate. "I love Edward. I don't need anyone but him, and he won't even try to talk to me after everything. How do I get him back? How do I make him listen? Mommy?" She rushed to her mother, hugged her. "I don't want to live without him." "Oh, daughter, I'm not a good counselor. If he loves you, he'll come back. Or maybe it was just an excuse to finally let you realize that for him, bachelor life is better than marital duties. There's a kind of man who's not cut out for married life." I don't believe that. This isn't about Edward. Time will tell, but in the meantime, try to calm down. Look at what happened as a test of your feelings, and let him come to his senses. You need a break from each other, and then you'll get together and talk about it. Figure out who's right and who's wrong. "How am I going to get to work?" The girl cried. "You'll have to see him every day." "I don't know how. Should I quit?" "You'll get over it. God put up with it. Smart people will understand and sympathize, but fools talk, and forget. And then maybe things will get better for you." A week later, Nora returned to work. She slowly approached the office. Her heart was racing. As soon as she entered the office, the firm's chief gossip girl immediately flew in. "You're a very good friend. I'm sorry." Nora looked guiltily at Harry. "For dragging you into all this. I said the first thing I could think of, just to spite him. But I didn't think he'd believe it. And then he came at you with his fists." She put her hand to the man's cheek, which had a bruise on it. "Did it hurt? I'm so ashamed of Edward. So easily and simply doubting you and me, it hurts. I will never forgive him." "Nora," Harry took her hands in his, "I'm always here for you. If you need help, remember, just call me. I'd do anything for you. Anything you want, I'll do. You know how I feel about you, don't you? Harry, you're so good, but I love Edward and I can't help it. So what's next? If he doesn't call, are you just going to suffer?" "I'll go." She stood up resolutely. "I'll talk to him quietly, explain everything. I think he's already realized that he made a mistake, but he's afraid to admit it. You know he's proud. And then I need to find out if he was really delayed by the elevator. That story sounds too far-fetched. What if it really happened? Then what if I was wrong to be mad at him? Let you down? No, thank you. Nora shook his hand, looking at him gratefully. I'll do it. Thank you so much for your support. It would have been very hard without you. I can imagine how you must be feeling about the fight with Edward. I'm ashamed to be the bone of contention between you two. When I explain it to him, I'm sure you'll reconcile and he'll understand. After seeing Harry off, the girl quickly cleaned herself up and went to her lover's house. She imagined that they would laugh about the accident, hug, Edward would kiss her, and everything would be like it was before. Nora firmly pressed the call button and was answered by silence. Strange, she said thoughtfully. It doesn't open. Where could he have gone? Maybe he went to the store. I'll try calling. She dialed the man's number. No answer. Why? Doesn't want to talk? The girl still stood under the doors and then returned home. There her mother was already waiting for her. Daughter, where have you been? I'm exhausted. Why don't you answer the phone? I turned off the sound. I don't want to talk to anyone. Sorry, even to you. I wanted to be alone. Nora went into the living room without undressing and sank down tiredly on the sofa. Mom, he's not home. He's not answering my calls. What am I going to do? I feel so bad. Did you go to Edward? My mother was surprised. Don't you have any pride left? I did. I wanted to tell him everything, but I kissed the closed door and came back with nothing. Well, what did you want? After news like that, any man's gonna lose his temper. It's all right, he'll pout and come back. I didn't think my innocent deception would go this far. I didn't even think he'd believe it. He should have realized that you can't change from one groom to another in a few minutes before registration. He must have been so angry with you that he lost his judgment. He was jealous of Harry, especially since he added fuel to the fire with his declaration of love for you. I didn't even realize he was secretly in love with you, always keeping a low profile with Edward. I don't know what to do. Nora was desperate. I love Edward. I don't need anyone but him, and he won't even try to talk to me after everything. How do I get him back? How do I make him listen? Mommy? She rushed to her mother, hugged her. I don't want to live without him. Oh, daughter, I'm not a good counselor. If he loves you, he'll come back. Or maybe it was just an excuse to finally let you realize that for him, bachelor life is better than marital duties. There's a kind of man who's not cut out for married life. I don't believe that. This isn't about Edward. Time will tell, but in the meantime, try to calm down. Look at what happened as a test of your feelings, and let him come to his senses. You need a break from each other, and then you'll get together and talk about it. Figure out who's right and who's wrong. How am I going to get to work? The girl cried. You'll have to see him every day. I don't know how. Should I quit? You'll get over it. God put up with it. Smart people will understand and sympathize, but fools talk, and forget. And then maybe things will get better for you. A week later, Nora returned to work. She slowly approached the office. Her heart was racing. As soon as she entered the office, the firm's chief gossip girl immediately flew in. Nora. Wendy looked at her curiously. When I found out that your fiancé left you, right before the marriage ceremony, I almost went crazy. How could he do that to you? She looked at the girl with sympathy. Poor girl. I probably would have died of grief. But I didn't want to die, sorry. I was just speaking figuratively, no offense. I can imagine how you must be feeling right now. What happened? Why did he do that to you? We've had the whole office buzzing for a week, and we were supposed to celebrate your wedding today. How pathetic is that? Tell me, why didn't the wedding happen? I'm dying of curiosity. Did you find out he's seeing someone else? Yes, Edward and I didn't get married, but don't sensationalize the news. Why not? Why didn't we? Because he was late for the wedding. What do you mean he was late? The woman was stunned. Does that happen? As you can see, it does. He was late through no fault of his own. He was on his way to the wedding venue, but he got stuck in the elevator. Really? What a number! Wendy listened avidly to the story of Nora and Edward's breakup, her eyes almost bulging with surprise. So what now? Have you set a new wedding date yet? When? No, we've decided to break up. What do you mean, break up? You two are such a beautiful couple, and you've been together for months. This situation has made us rethink a lot of things. We decided it was best for both of us. Oh, that's a shame. But you two are so right for each other. I'm so sorry. I really sympathize. Breaking up over some stupid incident. Can't you make up? I'm sorry. It's been a busy week. Nora began to study the papers, trying to get rid of the annoying interlocutor. When she had everything she wanted, Wendy ran back to her room. Nora knew that now she would tell her colleagues in detail about the failed wedding, not forgetting to make up something. But she did not care. She caught sympathetic glances, and as soon as she walked into the office, the conversations died down. For a whole week, the entire office plankton had been discussing Nora's personal life. Why don't you ask? Asked a few days later, one of her coworkers, "Where's Edward? Don't you care where he's gone? Or didn't you even notice his absence? I'm not interested in knowing." Nora frowned, though she'd been curious about it for a long time. We were going on vacation, probably still at sea. I'm the one who came back to work early. No, he immediately after your spat wrote an application for transfer to another branch of our firm, and he was transferred. He didn't want to see you to avoid upsetting you more after what he'd done. So you really did not know anything. The woman pretended to be surprised. I was sure everyone knew. I didn't, and I don't care at all where he is now. Coldly, Nora replied, I hope he doesn't come back here again. He left, didn't even say anything, and I was hoping I'd see him and explain everything. Why did he do that to me? God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I just blurt out that I married Harry? Why didn't I listen to him? I attacked him at once, insulted him by mistrusting him. And he's good. She justified herself to herself. He dropped everything and cut me out of his life. Nora? One morning, Wendy met her in the hallway of the firm and gave her a sly wink. There were flowers for you, so I put them on your desk. Such an attentive man, and what a gorgeous bouquet. Flowers? The woman rejoiced, her heart snapped with happiness. It's Edward. He changed his mind and came back. As if on wings, she ran to the office, grabbed the bouquet, pressed it to her chest, buried her nose in the flowers, savoring the fragrance. Then she opened the card and almost cried. Dear Nora, she read. I can't bear to see you suffer. I invite you to dinner at the restaurant tonight. Harry, did you like my present? She heard behind her and flinched in surprise. Yes, thank you. Wiping away tears, Nora answered, turning to the man. She smiled, though she wanted to weep at the top of her voice. The flowers are beautiful. It's my pleasure, but it wasn't worth the expense. Do you accept my invitation? The man asked insistently, not listening to any objections. Harry, the woman hesitated. I'm not in the mood for restaurants, you must understand. I don't feel like going out at all, and after work I have to go home right away. All urgent matters can be postponed for later. I don't take no for an answer. The man said decisively. Edward's gone, You can't stay locked up for the rest of your life. You need to relax a little, take your mind off things. You've had enough of being cooped up like a nun. Let's go out, it's no obligation, just a friendly dinner. I won't ask for anything in return. Can I afford to take a beautiful woman to a restaurant? I guess you're right. After some thought, she agreed. Let's go out because I'm going to go crazy with worry. That's great. Harry was happy. Then I'll meet you in the parking lot right after work. I'm glad you said yes. I wanted to do something nice for you. He took her to the most expensive restaurant in town. I've never been here before. Robia, Nora remarked, looking around at the fancy furnishings. Nora. Harry spoke softly, helping her to a seat at the table. His eyes glittered feverishly. His eyes were filled with desire. I'd do anything for you, and the restaurant is just a little thing, just a good time. Thank you. I appreciate your concern, but I shouldn't have spent so much. She was uncomfortable with the man's insistent stare. Everything here is too expensive. I don't feel comfortable. It's nothing. I should have told you a long time ago, but I didn't dare for fear of hurting you. What do you mean? Nora looked at him in bewilderment. But I can't keep quiet anymore either. It's pathetic to watch you suffer because you've broken up with Edward and he's not worth your little finger. Haven't you forgotten how he treated you? I'll never forgive him for that. How can you say that? Edward is your friend. After all, we're all entitled to make mistakes. I'm wrong too. Yes, he's my friend, but I care about you too. So it's my duty to tell you the truth. I can't keep silent any longer, knowing that you've been deceived all this time. I feel like an accomplice because I didn't say anything to you, because I didn't say anything. I don't know what you mean. Nora got a chill inside. I'm afraid you won't like what I'm about to say. Harry paused for a moment, then continued. Edward has another woman, and she's expecting a child with him. He's been hesitant to tell you, so he's been holding off on the wedding. The elevator was just an excuse to finally break up with you for good. You know he left right away, right? He left with that woman. But they're probably already married because the baby's due soon. Edward, cheating though he was, couldn't leave the baby without a last name. That's why he disappeared so quickly. No, with tears in her eyes, Nora whispered. He couldn't do this to me. I don't believe you. I would have known, felt that he had another. Are you saying this so I won't be so hurt by his betrayal? But you're making it worse. Shut up. I don't want to hear any more about it. I understand. Harry said softly, taking her hands in his. You love him, but he has neglected your love for another woman. And that's the truth he kept from you and demanded my silence. He didn't have the courage to confess his adultery. He ran away like a coward, unable to appreciate your feelings. He's not worthy of your love. I realize you're confused and depressed, thinking you're alone, but you're not. There is a man next to you who is ready to support you, to protect you, to warm you with his warmth. Look at me, Edward's gone and I'm here. What do you want from me? Tears were streaming from Nora's eyes. She hardly knew what was happening. There was only one thought running through her mind. He has another. He's had another woman all this time. Why did I ignore the obvious? Was I afraid to find out the truth? No, it can't be. Edward is incapable of lying. I feel in my heart that it's a deception, a trap. And if it were true, she was tormented by the worm of doubt in her heart. Nora, Harry caught her eye. You know how I feel about you, don't you? If you agree to give me a chance to be there for you, to support you, to comfort you, I will prove that my love is stronger. I'll do anything to make you forget to even think about him. But I don't love you. Frankly confessed the young woman. And I don't think I'll ever love you the way I love Edward. Why do you need me? It doesn't matter." Harry hurried on, noticing the change in her eyes. First surprise, then doubt. "I assure you that my love is enough for the two of us, and in time you will love me too. Just don't refuse now. Think about it. I'm in no hurry." "Promise to think about it." "I don't need much, just to know that I have at least a modicum of hope that I'll feel the same way." And Nora suddenly realized that she needed a man's firm shoulder right now. Harry was so sincere that she believed him. "Yes, I promise to think about it." She answered the persistent beau. "Thank you." He sighed in relief and started kissing her hands. "You don't know how happy I am to hear you say that. I've always been jealous of Edward. Even in my mind, I was afraid to think of you in any other way than as my best friend's fiancé. And now I am free to look at you with tenderness, with love, and no one can stop me from doing so. You are my goddess. I am ready to pray to you." Nora blushed at such words. "Harry, you're rushing things." "Yes, I am. Because I've lost a lot of time envying other people's happiness, but now I won't miss the opportunity to make you mine." Harry wooed her beautifully. Nora had heard the office gossip about her and Harry's relationship more than once. Look at her. No sooner had the trail of one suitor gone cold than another appeared. She's not the least bit embarrassed to accept his advances. Some people are lucky. You don't know how to get one, but she has 2 suitors at once. What do they see in her? No skin, no face. Don't tell me she's beautiful, stylish. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Maybe she knows some kind of spell for men. Let's ask her. Happy. Harry puts flowers on her table every morning, takes her to restaurants. But I don't think she's very happy about it. She's still pining for Edward. No, Harry's as good a groom as Edward. Nora was uncomfortable with such talk, but she tried to ignore it. There was indeed a bouquet of flowers waiting for her every morning. Why, Harry, why? It's such a waste of money. Don't. It makes me uncomfortable in front of my coworkers. I like it. It's fun, he told her. To please the woman I love, and I don't care about the people around me. You're giving food to the gossip mongers. So what? Let them envy you, but tonight we're going to the theater. He put the tickets in front of her. Harry. Nora shook her hands. It's been 100 years since I've been to the theater. Thank you. I knew you'd like it. The best reward for me is seeing the smile on your face. I'm happy I can take your mind off your sad thoughts for a while. I'm very grateful to you. Nora was embarrassed when, at times like this, Harry tried to hug her and kiss her. She wanted to be more affectionate with him, but something kept stopping her, and in the evenings, alone, she cried into her pillow and remembered Edward's kisses, which gave her goosebumps, as if she were in his arms. Harry had been paying attention not only to Nora, but to her mother as well. What a man! She admired Harry when he once again presented her with a small gift and flowers. Attentive, caring, and he loves you, you can tell. What more do you want? What do you want? That's the kind of man every woman dreams of. Is one better than the other? What do you see in Edward? Where is he now? No one knows. Never heard from, never seen. Vanished, as if he never existed, and Harry's always there. If he proposes, don't you dare refuse. There's no such thing as a man on the prowl. Mama, I don't love him. How can you marry without love? You'd be fooling him and yourself, and then you'd suffer all your life. So what is she going to suffer? There's your love. How did it turn out? Tears and sleepless nights. Have you seen yourself in the mirror? Only eyes left on your face, and they'll soon be tears. The main thing is that the man loved, and you respected him, and then you will not notice how you fall in love, Such a man is easy to love. It was 6 months before Edward disappeared. One day Harry, waiting for her after work, said, "I've asked our director for a few days' vacation without your consent." "Why?" Without looking at the man, Nora asked. "I'm not going anywhere. I bought a vacation home. A change of scenery won't hurt you. I can't look at you without crying." And then he smiled enigmatically. "I have a surprise. Shall we go? The hotel's booked. They're waiting for us. By the way, your mom approved the trip." "Okay, let's go." With a sigh, the woman agreed. "Just promise me if I don't like it, we'll come back right away?" "Deal." Cheerfully, the man replied. "But I'm sure you will still be begging me to stay there." Vacation in Sosnovy Bor, on the shore of a picturesque lake, did its job. Nora was revitalized, smiling more often. "How grateful I am to you for bringing me here." The woman confessed once, admiring the sunset. The dark surface of the lake had a calming effect on her. "I knew you'd like it. It's nice and quiet here. No one is whispering behind your back, discussing your personal life. It's a shame we can't stay here forever, but we can always come back." The last night they sat at the restaurant for dinner. "Nora, do you know how I feel about you? I've waited a long time for this moment, and now I've made up my mind." He took a velvet box out of his jacket pocket, opened it, and said solemnly, "Marry me. I promise you will never regret that you said yes to me. I love you very much, and I hope one day you'll say those words to me too. Why aren't you saying anything?" "Do you agree?" "Yes," Nora answered decisively. "I agree to marry you." Harry rejoiced. He put a small diamond ring on her finger. "My beloved." Holding her hands in his and looking at her admiringly, said the satisfied groom, "We have many beautiful days ahead of us without cloudy family happiness. You don't realize what a gift you have given me by accepting my proposal." Nora didn't feel particularly happy about the upcoming wedding. "I'll try to love him in time," she consoled herself. Mama was right. It's a win-win situation. Who else would I wait for? And Harry, here he is, kind, gentle, tender, affectionate. What about Edward? It's a pain in my heart. He's with someone else. I must forget him, erase him from my memory. Nora and Harry had been married for almost a year. He was madly in love with her, trying to win the young woman's affection. He gave her gifts, took her on weekend trips, bought her a car. Alas, Nora did not reciprocate. "I don't see any joy on your face." Her mother was so impressed with her. "Harry would go to pieces to get any sign of attention from you, and you can't get enough. What do you want? Why do you torture him?" "Mom, I don't know why I married him. I don't feel anything for him. It's been a year, and we're like strangers. I think we made an irreparable mistake getting married. He played on my loneliness after I broke up with Edward. I didn't realize what I was doing, and I don't know how to fix it now." "What? Are you crazy? Is this how you respond to his concern? Is it hard for you to be nicer to him? He's a good man, and he deserves your attention. He wants kids. So give him a child. Then the stupid thoughts will go out of your head. You're the one who's doing nothing. When you have a baby, you won't have time to think about silly things. Children bring us closer together. How can I have a child with a man I don't love? Do you want him to be miserable like his parents?" "No, I'd rather be alone. What are you making up?" The mother was indignant. "You're ungrateful. I don't know how Harry still puts up with you. If I were him, I'd have dropped everything and run away." "Mother, how can you talk to me like that? I was hoping you'd be supportive. You're my daughter, but I can't bear to see you both suffer. And it's all your fault. Do you know how many families live without passion for each other? And they have babies. Did you and Dad ever really love each other? We're different. Mother was embarrassed. So do I, Mommy. I want to wake up and fall asleep in the arms of a desirable man and not shudder at his every touch. I think I'm gonna go. She immediately got ready and went outside. It was a beautiful spring day. Nora wandered aimlessly through the city, remembering the unpleasant conversation with her mother. Nora? Suddenly she heard a familiar voice and shuddered in surprise. Hello. Edward? Hello. I didn't expect to see you here. I heard you'd gone away. I did, but now I'm back, and I'm very glad to see you. He looked at her carefully, his eyes shining with happiness. How are you living? I'm fine, and you? Can I congratulate you? On what? Perplexed stared at her former fiancé. What did you have, a boy or a girl? What are you talking about? I don't understand you. Harry said you were supposed to have a baby. Edward stared at her, frozen with amazement, and he gradually began to understand her words. I don't know why he thought I was supposed to have a baby, but I think we should talk to you. Don't you think? Yes, you're probably right. The young woman agreed. I'd like to get some answers to some questions. There is a great cafe nearby. I suggest we go there and have a cup of coffee to our chance meeting. In silence, they reached the cafe and ordered. You've lost weight, Pale. Edward noticed. Tell me, how did you know I had a child? When you disappeared without telling me, Harry said you'd gone off with the mother of your child, that all this wedding stuff was just an excuse to get rid of me. What are you talking about? Edward was indignant. I was madly in love with you. Yes, I was afraid of losing my freedom, but that's the fear of a bachelor. I couldn't imagine life without you. How could you even think that about me? Why would I deceive you? I never had any other woman. I only wanted you. And yet, you immediately believed that I changed my fiancé at the marriage ceremony. So you didn't trust me. Jealousy blinded me. I realized later that I was wrong. I realized I had wronged you undeservedly, but I couldn't get over my pride. I was hurt when you refused to believe the elevator story. So we both overreacted? That's what it turns out. I was really sorry I left so soon. I wanted to come back, but I found out you were married. I never would have married if I hadn't known you had another woman. Harry assured me you'd been with her a long time, and then told me you were having a baby. This news completely threw me off balance. I had no reason not to believe him. I was confused, I was all alone, and the resentment I felt for you all blurred. So what do you mean, Harry lied to me? Of course he did. Why would I want some mythical woman? I didn't want to live without you. I was just angry that you chose my friend over me. Anger and jealousy are bad counselors. I chose to run away instead. I realized it too late. I should have trusted you. And I you. But Harry assured me so convincingly that you had another woman a long time ago. Why would I want another woman? Edward asked quietly, taking Nora's hands in his. I still love you. She felt goosebumps run up and down her body at the man's touch. She'd never felt anything like it when Harry touched her. We've wasted so much time speculating about each other and haven't taken the time to sit down and talk. Say, begging, looking at her, Edward asked, can you ever forgive me? This year has been like a dream. I've been very unhappy without you. Don't you have any love left in your heart for me? I thought I had fallen out of love with you because you cheated, but now I realize I still can't live without you. Everything between Harry and me was a terrible mistake. Darling, exclaimed the joyful Edward. The cafe patrons looked at him perplexedly. You can't imagine how much I've missed you. I don't want to let you go. I want to kiss you, caress you. Why don't we run away from here? Get a hotel room. Let's do it. Goodbye, laughed Nora. I missed you too. It's a shame we lost a whole year because of stupid grudges, but we can make up for it. Edward looked tenderly at the young woman and could not get enough of her. He caressed every feature of her face with his gaze. Waiter! Keeping his eyes on his beloved, he called out to the young man, Bring the bill. They left the cafe, holding hands, got into a cab, and went to the nearest hotel. There they took a room, turned off their cell phones, and began to enjoy each other's intimacy. Margaret. Entering his mother-in-law's apartment, Harry asked her from the doorstep, Do you know where Nora is? I can't get through to her. She's turned her cell phone off for some reason. She should have been back by now. I hope nothing's happened. When was the last time you spoke to her? We had a fight. The woman admitted it. And she left. I don't know where she went. I'm going to try calling her myself. It's really disconnected. Margaret looked at the phone receiver in confusion. Maybe the battery's dead, and she's at her girlfriend's. Did you call them and find out? I called all her friends. The man said worriedly. No one's seen her. I don't know where she could have gone. As long as she's okay, it's not a big deal. Try to reassure my son-in-law, Margaret. Maybe she's already home, went for a walk and got held up. You go ahead. If I see her, I'll call you. You can rest assured. Yes, I think I'll go. Maybe she really is back already. It's still weird that you didn't tell anyone. Just let me know so I don't worry if she comes home. The woman asked. Okay, I'll keep you posted. Harry returned to the empty house. Nora was gone. He was out of his mind with worry. He was about to run to the police station when the key turned in the lock and Nora appeared on the doorstep. Where have you been? Her husband exclaimed indignantly, looking at her indignantly. I've been looking all over for you. Margaret is worried. I'm not going to report to you. Nora replied calmly, I'm a free woman. Do I have the right to be alone? You're a married woman, and I'm your husband. I need to know where you've been. You won't be a husband for long. The young woman remarked, I'm filing for divorce, and this issue is out of the question. Do not try to dissuade. I've already tolerated a whole year, but now I've finally made up my mind. We can't be together. What? The man screamed. Explain to me what happened in the few hours you were away from home. What fly bit you? Are you drunk? I met Edward. Nora answered. He told me everything. It turns out you've been lying to me all this time. He's never had a woman, and he's never been a happy father. Why did you make all that up? I don't understand. You don't. Harry clenched his fingers into fists, so white his knuckles turned white, his eyes bloodshot. And I'll tell you, it's all because of you. Edward has always had the best in life, a job, a car, an apartment, a woman. Everything was easy, and I had to make my way through life the hard way. He's the lucky one, and I'm the loser. But now I have the most desirable woman in the world, and no one can stop me. It was worth it. You're my wife. He gave you up, and I'm not going to share you with anyone. You're crazy, Nora said in horror. Her heart clenched with fear. She was afraid he was going to hit her. Yes, Harry's eyes burned with feverish fire. I've gone mad with love for you. Is that a crime? I won't give you to anyone, do you hear? You will stay with me. I won't let anyone else have you. No one will love you as I do. Edward is not capable of that kind of love. You're mine, do you understand? Mine and no one else's. I will destroy anyone who gets in my way. Harry, I don't love you and I never will. I've always been honest with you. Why torture each other? But I love you. That's enough for me. Let me go, please. Nora begged. We're both suffering. No way. I won't give you a divorce. You'll stay here with me. And if anyone dares to take you away from me, I will stop at nothing. Nora was scared, not for herself, for Edward. All right. Calm down, please. The woman realized it was best to backtrack now. I'm not going anywhere. Good for you. Satisfied, Harry slowly began to calm down. Why do you want that traitor? You think he's changed. You'll thank me for saving you from him. Have you forgotten how much you suffered? How I pulled you out of your depression? No, I won't let him anywhere near you. That evening, after waiting for Harry to fall asleep, she locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the water, and called Edward. If you could have seen it, she told him. What did he look like when he found out you were back? I've never seen him like that. Do you want me to talk to him myself? The man asked. I'm begging you. Let's just leave it as it is for now, shall we? She asked. I'll try to talk to him again, only a little later. He must realize that it's impossible to live with someone you don't love. You could just leave with me. Edward suggested it. Leave him, let him live his life as he likes. After all, you can get a divorce through the courts. No, I don't want to do that. I've got to get him to sign the petition. Time passed, and Harry never let his wife out of his sight, supervising her at home, at work, accompanying her everywhere. Nora couldn't find the right occasion to talk. Why are you so pale? One day Harry asked, concerned about his wife's condition. I've been sick this morning, she confessed. Are you ill? No, it's something else. I'm pregnant. You're pregnant. Nora saw her husband's face change. With what? Tell me, bitch. He grabbed her shoulders painfully, pushing her against the wall. Don't touch me, the woman said warningly. You yourself always wanted children. Oh, I see. It suddenly dawned on Harry. You slept with him. Cheated on me? How could you get mixed up with that traitor again? After everything I've done for you? What were you hoping for? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Let it be known that I can't have children. I had the mumps when I was a kid. I loved you, but you deceived me, trampled on my feelings, let that scoundrel crush me. You and Great. He swung at her. Nora squirmed, expecting him to hit her, but instead, he slammed the room door with all his might. Shards of broken glass spattered pitifully. Yes, I cheated on you, and I wasn't going to hide it. Nora looked directly at her husband. I'm asking you to give me a divorce. Let's part amicably. Let me go. How could I have been so wrong about you? Harry looked at her with regret. I thought I was the best of women, and you're just like everyone else. It's all Edward's fault. He has to go away. Yes, when he's gone, will you stop thinking about him and love me? No. Nora shrieked in horror and tried to hold Harry. You wouldn't dare hurt him. Stop it, Harry. You're making a terrible mistake. I'll never love you anyway. I was grateful for this year until I found out you told me the truth. How are you better than Edward? Don't you dare compare me to him. Harry roared. He abandoned you, and I tried to save you. But it wasn't his fault, and you know it as well as I do. Oh, so you're protecting him? You're afraid for his worthless life? He'll pay for everything. I won't let him destroy everything I've built. I had a family, a wife I loved, and then this handsome man shows up again. I'm left with a broken home again. But no, I won't let you. I know what I have to do. Nora grabbed his arm, and he pushed her away from him. Furious, Harry grabbed his jacket and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Nora grabbed the phone. Edward, Edward. She kept crying. "Pick up the phone. Please, my love. I wouldn't survive if anything happened to you." But the man didn't answer. What should I do? I have to warn him somehow. Harry's capable of anything in his condition. What am I supposed to do? I have to go to him. Right. What am I doing sitting here? Cab. Yeah, we should call a cab, she said as she dialed the number of the cab service. "Hello, young lady, would you have a car, please?" The woman gave the address. In a few minutes she was already sitting in the car, continuing to dial her lover's number from time to time. Her anxiety was growing. Not remembering herself, she went up to Edward's apartment. "Oh my God," she said when she saw that the door to the apartment was ajar. "Am I too late?" Her insides were shaking, and on unbendable legs, she strode into the living room and cried out desperately, "Edward, my love." The man was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. She fell to her knees in front of him, fumbling for a pulse, frantically dialing the ambulance number. "Ambulance?" Crying, Nora shouted into the phone. "A man is dying here. Help me, quick." "Edward, are you alive, my dearly beloved?" The woman stroked his hair, leaned over and kissed him. "Say something, I beg you. Call me back. Don't die. Don't leave me." The man was silent. His face was dead pale. The doctors arrived about 10 minutes later, quickly assessed the situation. "Who are you to the victim?" The doctor asked sternly, "And how did you get into the apartment?" I'm his fiancée. The apartment was open, so I went in. The victim's head is smashed and he's unconscious. I'll have to call the police." "Yes, do what you have to do. You'll have to wait for the police to arrive and tell them what happened. But I didn't see anything. I came in and Edward was already on the floor. You'll still have to explain yourself to the police. We can't stay here. Your friend needs to be in intensive care right away. But I wanted to come with you. Your fiancé is still unconscious. You're more important. Come back later when he comes to his senses." The doctor gave me the address of the hospital. Nora was afraid to be alone in the apartment, afraid that Harry might come back. The young woman flinched when the doorbell rang. "Open up, police." She heard it and opened the door. The police inspected the apartment. They found no signs of forced entry, nor did they find the crime weapon. Who could have done it? The investigator asked her directly. "Do you have any idea?" "I think my husband did it, Harry." "Didn't you say the victim was your fiancé?" "My husband and I were getting a divorce. It's a very complicated story." "Well, interesting." The coroner sat down in a chair in the living room, put his foot on his leg. "Tell me your story, young lady, in detail." Nora told everything, starting with her and Edward's wedding. "So you think your husband might have hit Edward?" "I'm afraid he did." Wiping away her tears, Nora said, "We'd had a fight, and I asked him to give me a divorce. He became furious, threatened, and then ran here. I didn't have time to warn Edward." "And where is Harry now?" "You don't know. Did you call him?" "No, I never saw him again." "Do you have a key to this apartment?" "No. The door was open when I got here." The landlord must have let him in if the door was intact. Of course, Edward didn't feel threatened because they were best friends. "Okay, we'll figure it out, but you guys be careful. Your husband seems to have some mental issues. Have you noticed any signs of aggression before?" "No, just today. Usually he's always calm and composed. I don't know what's gotten into him. He took the news of the divorce very painfully, but I didn't expect such a reaction from him. I think that kind of aggression, sooner or later, would have manifested itself towards you or someone else. It happens that a person behaves like a perfectly healthy person, but one day a trigger goes off and he can no longer control himself. Apparently, that trigger was the news of the divorce, so you'd better find somewhere to stay until we find Harry. I'm afraid you might be in danger, too." "No," the woman said. "He won't touch me. He loves me too much. I wouldn't be so sure." The man shook his head doubtfully. The investigator left. Nora closed the apartment and drove to the hospital. "You can't see him." A nurse tried to stop her. "He's in intensive care. They won't let anyone in." "Leave your number. We'll let you know when the patient comes to." "Please, I'm begging you. Will you let me stay with him?" "I'll be quiet. I won't interfere. I want him to see me first when he opens his eyes. I can nurse him." "All right." The girl's given up. "Just put on a robe. Make sure you wear a mask, cap, and booties. This is an intensive care unit, and be quiet, or I'll get a beating from the doctor. If he shows up, disappear as soon as I tell you." "Okay. Okay, thank you. I'd do anything to stay close to the one I love." Nora sat in the room next to Edward and cried. "It's all my fault," she thought. "Why? Why did I agree to marry Harry? I didn't love him. I knew I didn't love him. I knew I'd never love him. I let myself be deceived. Fool. All I want is Edward. My darling," she whispered, kissing his hand. "Just wake up, please. I love you so much. We're going to live happily ever after, and we'll never part again. I won't let you go anywhere, and I'll trust only you. My darling, my only one." Nora spent the whole night by Edward's side. In the morning, she fell into a restless sleep, dozing in her chair and holding Edward's hand tightly. She woke up every now and then during the night to see if he was awake. Tired, she laid her head in her arms on the edge of the bed and fell into sleep. When she woke up to someone stroking her hair, the woman lifted her head, shook it, shaking off the remnants of sleep, and straightened up. Edward was looking at her, smiling. "Are you awake?" She breathed out, tears of joy showing in her eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Not bad, just a headache and thirsty. I'll get the doctor right away." Nora jumped up, ran out into the corridor. "Nurse, tell the doctor Edward's awake." "Wait a minute, I'll give you something to drink." She quickly poured a glass of water and handed it to him. "How frightened I was when I found you on the floor in a pool of blood. How did I end up here?" "I don't remember much." He tried to get up. "Lie down, you can't move." The woman stopped him. "The doctor will be here in a minute. You'll have to get out of here." A nurse entered the room, looked at the patient. "Go home, you need to rest. The doctor will examine him, prescribe treatment, and come back in the evening. I think he'll be able to talk to you by then. Don't miss him." Nora leaned over Edward, kissed him. "I'll be right back. I promise not to be long." The woman walked out of the hospital and wondered, "Where will I go? If Harry is still in custody, it's not safe to go home. To my mother's, but that would mean putting her in danger too. Harry could meet me at her house. Go to Edward's? I don't think Harry will be looking for me there. I've got the keys with me. That's right. It's probably the safest place." As the young woman pondered, the phone rang. "Nora, hello. It's the investigator." The man gave his last name. "We have your husband in custody. You have nothing to fear. We have him in custody, and he's already confessing. Could you come to the investigative committee? You'll thank me for saving you from him. Have you forgotten how much you suffered? How I pulled you out of your depression? No, I won't let him anywhere near you." That evening, after waiting for Harry to fall asleep, she locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the water, and called Edward. If you could have seen it, she told him. What did he look like when he found out you were back? I've never seen him like that. Do you want me to talk to him myself? The man asked. I'm begging you. Let's just leave it as it is for now, shall we? She asked. I'll try to talk to him again, only a little later. He must realize that it's impossible to live with someone you don't love. You could just leave with me. Edward suggested it. Leave him, let him live his life as he likes. After all, you can get a divorce through the courts. No, I don't want to do that. I've got to get him to sign the petition. Time passed, and Harry never let his wife out of his sight, supervising her at home, at work, accompanying her everywhere. Nora couldn't find the right occasion to talk. Why are you so pale? One day Harry asked, concerned about his wife's condition. I've been sick this morning, she confessed. Are you ill? No, it's something else. I'm pregnant. You're pregnant. Nora saw her husband's face change. With what? Tell me, bitch. He grabbed her shoulders painfully, pushing her against the wall. Don't touch me, the woman said warningly. You yourself always wanted children. Oh, I see. It suddenly dawned on Harry. You slept with him. Cheated on me? How could you get mixed up with that traitor again? After everything I've done for you? What were you hoping for? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Let it be known that I can't have children. I had the mumps when I was a kid. I loved you, but you deceived me, trampled on my feelings, let that scoundrel crush me. You and Great. He swung at her. Nora squirmed, expecting him to hit her, but instead, he slammed the room door with all his might. Shards of broken glass spattered pitifully. Yes, I cheated on you, and I wasn't going to hide it. Nora looked directly at her husband. I'm asking you to give me a divorce. Let's part amicably. Let me go. How could I have been so wrong about you? Harry looked at her with regret. I thought I was the best of women, and you're just like everyone else. It's all Edward's fault. He has to go away. Yes, when he's gone, will you stop thinking about him and love me? No. Nora shrieked in horror and tried to hold Harry. You wouldn't dare hurt him. Stop it, Harry. You're making a terrible mistake. I'll never love you anyway. I was grateful for this year until I found out you told me the truth. How are you better than Edward? Don't you dare compare me to him. Harry roared. He abandoned you, and I tried to save you. But it wasn't his fault, and you know it as well as I do. Oh, so you're protecting him? You're afraid for his worthless life? He'll pay for everything. I won't let him destroy everything I've built. I had a family, a wife I loved, and then this handsome man shows up again. I'm left with a broken home again. But no, I won't let you. I know what I have to do. Nora grabbed his arm, and he pushed her away from him. Furious, Harry grabbed his jacket and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Nora grabbed the phone. Edward, Edward. She kept crying. Pick up the phone. Please, my love. I wouldn't survive if anything happened to you. But the man didn't answer. What should I do? I have to warn him somehow. Harry's capable of anything in his condition. What am I supposed to do? I have to go to him. Right. What am I doing sitting here? Cab. Yeah, we should call a cab, she said as she dialed the number of the cab service. Hello, young lady, would you have a car, please? The woman gave the address. In a few minutes she was already sitting in the car, continuing to dial her lover's number from time to time. Her anxiety was growing. Not remembering herself, she went up to Edward's apartment. Oh my God, she said when she saw that the door to the apartment was ajar. Am I too late? Her insides were shaking, and on unbendable legs, she strode into the living room and cried out desperately, "Edward, my love!"